Hello friends. Welcome to the Phoenix What If. How are you all? So in this video, we will see. What if Naruto had the power of Amaterasu? But before we start, if you want more amazing stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Also if possible share this video with your friends. Now without wasting any more time, let's begin the story. The ninja of Konoha stared in wonder and disbelief. Shock was finally settling in fully and completely. A few things pierced though the shock-induced haze and battle brought disorientation. First off there was the devastation and destruction of about half of Konoha, including the larger hospital, several suburban complexes and a fourth of the entire village. Then there was the fact that for the next few miles if you were headed in certain direction, particularly if you followed the Kyuubi's path you wouldn't see a living thing for about 10 miles. 16 kilometers. Next, there was a goodly amount of ninja were dead. Anbu, Junin, Shunin and Genin. Many families would mourn their loss in the following weeks and months. One of the last things to register and possibly the most important one to a significant number, is that fact that the Hokage was dead. Damn, a ninja with brown hair tied back using some ninja wire wearing the remnants of a Chunin vest said, rather eloquently considering what just happened. Did what just happen, happen? Or am I hallucinating? Another ninja clutching the cracked remnants of an Anbu mask answered, you tell me. His gaze swept the area taking in the devastated countryside, a few ninjas wandering around, some more scrambling to save the lives of other comrades, friends, family, senseis and teammates. The screams and hisses and yells of pain, the grunts and sobs that accompanied the brutal but effective treaty sever injuries. The main piece of the noise that overlaid the screaming, dying notes were sobs of the living, weeping for the dead. To escape the noise of the earth, the pair of ninja looked to the sky. The sky was unearthly blue hue. It could have been smooth blue ice for that matter, but the sky was perfect. A perfect match to the now dead Hokage's eyes that is. Damn, the ninja thought, while looking at the few, white, puffy clouds that dared to venture onto the clear eye-colored sky. This is gonna take forever to clean up. Let's get this mess sorted out. We'll deal with that problem later. We need to help out where we can. The council convened almost exactly an hour after the, well for lack of a better word, incident. The council members' voices were raised, and the arguments heated, with passionate words flinging fast and furious. However, they agreed on a few things. 1. They would temporarily suspend everything but the Black Op and those vitally important missions. 3 weeks tops. They couldn't afford to do otherwise. 2. Rebuilding was the goal for now. It would take a few years, but by then, this mess would be behind them and they could get on with their lives. 3. The funeral arrangements would take forever. Assuming they managed to find half the people. Kyuubi had ate several of them and incinerated the rest in its caustic chakra. 4. No one was to talk about what the Hokage did to save them all. It was classified as an S-rank secret and furthermore sworn to flame. 5. No one, even those who saw what happened afterwards, were not to talk about that. That did not happen. Officially, that is, there were several witnesses to the event after all, so it had to happen in reality, just not their reality. It was made an S-rank secret with all the precautions and punishments that went with it. For those who didn't know, you didn't. Under no circumstances would this be discussed at all. 6. That boy had to be taken care of. Since no one knew who his parents were, or if they did, they weren't coming out and saying, he would be put in an orphanage. It was imperative. Supposedly, it was anyway, someone had to take care of the brat. He would be watched. Always watched. That was to be expected. He did have a demon inside him. That led to more arguments and questions. Like who would watch him, who would take care of him, and most of all what to do with him later. Around midnight the council was dismissed, and thus they dispersed. An old guy with some bandages covering his arm and eye walked up to the baby boy. His look said, just you wait kid, I'll find a way to kill you or keep you. The kid looked up at him and made some gurgles. His innocence showed in his eyes. The old scarred man's body language said that he meant it. He still backed off rather quickly though for a guy with a limp when a masked figure drifted out of the shadows to feed the kid. Meanwhile, the Kyuubi was pissed off to the 3rd degree. Maybe to the nth degree since he hadn't been this pissed in all of his long and sometimes tedious existence. His day, no the entire damn week, If he was to use human terms, just got shot to hell and back. No, that wasn't what happened. He'd been to hell several times to visit. His life just got screwed over on a scale only the gods could perpetuate. Which was what happened. It made him want to go and war against the gods, which he would only do if he was suicidal. Gods were paranoid fuckers. They kept nasty beasties as pets that would make him think twice. They also had these nasty little wars, minor battles and evil, sneaky deals going on all the time. Seriously, you'd think after the first few world god wars they'd know better, but no. He would have given up on his and his maker's entire species if they weren't necessary for the universe to function in any reasonable way, and if they didn't make and thus control all of the Biju. All of them, including the ones never seen in the human realm, except for Jaden, but he was basically whipped, tortured, brutally beaten, starved and controlled by her. She made the Kyuubi seem nice when he was on a bad day, like today for instance in comparison. Hence why you should never ask a god or goddess for help or help them in anything. The deal you made with them will always bit you in the tail region. If the deal didn't stick you on a cliff edge and then kicked you in the tail region. Which in the demon fox lord's mind was just what happened. As soon as he got out, which he would, it would only take time and some patience, and he had plenty of that. Looking at the boy's memories, he could see the old guy. He had an instant dislike for the guy. Maybe it was the fact that he was trapped in a baby, and thus he was distrustful of everything. That could have something to do with it. So he went with caution. The seal was still new. Despite being otherworldly, still new. It hadn't fully locked down all of his powers. Kyuubi then congratulated himself for being that awesome, since it was still taking a bit for the Shinigami's full power to clamp down on his. The Kyuubi gave a feral grin in its cage, acting upon more instinct than idea at the moment. His mind would catch up and direct when needed. He sent some of his energy out to make some links to the kid's senses. The disgusting two legs who called themselves humans, called this chakra. Nevertheless, bending his chakra to his will, 5 chains appeared, running into the darkness that was a newborn mind, and into his cage. With that, he connected the chains to a bracelet he made around his foreleg, and presto! A shock, a slight jolt, and access to the boy's senses. Then the seal cut him off from doing more. So much for taking complete control of the boy. That just made his week get a lot worse. If he had complete control of him, he could have made him grow up a lot faster to where he could get him to survive. That would be nice. Then he could go and trash the seal completely, destroy the village, or maybe haunt it. Kyuubi decided that it would need planning. He had taken down empires larger and more consolidated than this village. Damn the gods. Damn the two legs, and their noisy disgusting villages. Damn the Shinigami's seal. The whole world be damned. No, he couldn't do that, it was too fun to wreck, seriously fun to wreck. When it wasn't giving him worse torture than what hell could do. Like now. Maybe when he was out he'd go and talk to Karma and see what was up over ice cream, or at a sleepover, or... That brought the Kyuubi's mind to a different matter. How the blazes was he supposed to get fur done? That prospect made all the recent disaster in the Demon Lord's life dwindle down to non-comparative. His poor tails or her tails, at the moment he felt like being a he, the sulk was a bit more impressive. How in all the levels of hell did he, the great Demon Lord of the Fox tribe, get sealed inside this blonde, being that didn't deserve the title of brat? Try why did he get sealed into an apathetic evil genius in the making? He raved inside the cage that was the kid's mind. His life just was fucked up in ways that only the gods could manage. So how did it get screwed up to that level? Easy, he answered himself, the gods collected their due. Now he was stuck in a position to where he couldn't finish his task. Knowing the gods and destiny, not fate, they had a couple of backup plans. The continuation of the universe sort of depended on it. As gods were fundamental parts of the universe, they were saving their own asses. They would implement them, and not care at the cost. Kyuubi wondered how much they would up the world. It had been remade at least once that he knew of, gone through several mass extinctions, which pissed off Mother Earth, the collective big bitch of all the smaller Earth gods and goddesses. Delegation was everywhere now, he blamed Nessie. As Kyuubi had learned by reflection and contemplation, fate was a bitch. Destiny was a bigger one. Necessity, often called Nessie, was probably the worst one of the three. If Nessie said you had to get in an accident and hurt your legs, Destiny made sure it would happen, and then if by some strange phenomenon, aka Lady Luck, or some small god or goddess of chaos, and if it didn't happen, fate would then step in and make it happen, and typically in a worse fashion for whoever. Say you were supposed to sprain your ankle, and by some stroke of luck you didn't, fate would make you fall down the stairs and break a leg and maybe a rib or two and give you a nasty headache while at it. Somehow in a way that his liege lady, aka a goddess who he owed a favor to, subtly circumvented his questions about how a group of mortals could influence the balance and thus the fate of the universe. Her answer was like this: well, see, this family lives in this village. I think it's called Konoha, or something like that. Anyway, this family, I forget their name. Mortals don't live long enough for me to remember it, and I don't really socialize all that much with them. Shine-san does enough of that. Point is that this family needs to be killed. I've already got a deal set up with Shinigami-chan, to where Shine-san will take their souls, Shinigami-chan and not some summer Shinigami, and put them in lockup. No forgetful fountain, no reincarnation, no way back into the mortal realm ever. Going on, if we don't, this family will gain a bunch of power, and tip the scales of balance, then this power they've accumulated will eventually shift, most likely towards evil, and the death magics, which will go and be the death of the world. When he asked why not the entire race of humans, his answer was this: sorry, no can do. The Earth Mother is mad enough. I mean, if we did that would make like the 7th or 8th time we recreated humanity. She's just might get pissed enough to scrap them entirely. Then we would get bored without humans to entertain us. We might just have to go to Plan P pandas. Maybe after a few tries we could get them worship us. It only took us 3 tries to get them to the current cuteness level. Although my brother would get mad. He likes bunnies better. I think he managed to get a colony of those super bunnies to live in that place, as like a civilization. Current cuteness level? Had he really once thought that all goddess would be mature? Hey, don't you dare make fun of me. I can spread your ashes on the wind. What ashes? I am a mass of swirling energy with intelligence. I could be anything. A mouse even. I just like the fox's form. It's what he was used to. I am so going to turn you into a mouse later, after you finish this task. Can I be a cute mouse with a mohawk, and could I breathe fire? No, last time I let you do that I was grounded for like a century. The dragon people still are mad at us. So how will I know which family to kill? Well, they look like. Hence how he went and got screwed. It was supposed to be easy, however what he didn't expect was what happened next. Everyone and their third cousin twice removed knew what happened next. A blonde man with a white cape, he somehow sensed irony coming into play with the white knight theme thingy there holding a baby who was also blonde, on a giant Yakuza frog, went and sealed him away. Yep, his life was fucked up. At least with what he was able to do before the seal shut him off, he was able to escape boredom somewhat. In truth, it was like watching a movie in surround sound, with other benefits. Such as smell. It wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for the fact he'd tied his senses in with the kids. There was also the fact that when humans were around age 10 or so is when their sense of smell was sharpest. The kid wasn't 10 yet, but due to the sense chains, as Kyuubi had dubbed them, continually channeled information on the small energy flow he had running through it, had sharpened his senses to where it was impossible to sneak up on him. Not that that was really the case, the kid was unaware. The demon inside him wasn't. A while back the Kyuubi had figured something out. The stupid seal imposed restrictions on him as soon as he thought about it. Hence why his desperate gamble, or if he was feeling particularly truthful, his whim for having access to his senses worked while the entire force grow the kid and kick some ass plan didn't. In fact, the seal, as he'd come to know, was partially sentient. It also had access to his thoughts. So any plans he came up would be null and void. Spur of the moment things he could do. Like the sense chains. The damn seal actually slowed the kid's growth rate down, using his chakra. The big blondie on giant frog, who did this to him, if he wasn't already in Shinigami-sama's belly for all eternity, would have to deal with a very pissed fox demon, who grudgingly respected him. The guy had to be genius. Or crazy. It seemed the same thing to him. Wasn't there a phrase about it only being measured by success or something like that? The Kyuubi, bored with deep thinking, went and closed his eyes. Now he could see out the kid's eyes. The kid had a really stupid name. Oh, what was it? Naruto. He really didn't care. He went to go and relieve some boredom. The place was so boring and one can only sleep and stare at his surroundings for so long. In the Hokage's office. "So why are you here?" the old Hokage asked from behind his desk, contentedly smoking on his pipe. "Well," the Lady Anbu said, clearly a little embarrassed. "Sir, you recall that you asked that Anbu with the ability to see chakra, or detect minute changes in it, to watch over the boy." The old Hokage nodded sagely. What she was saying was that it was mostly Uchiha and Hyuga doing the guarding, mostly Hyuga though, because for some reason the female Hyuga loved him. He could understand, but the rest? It defied most logic and natural laws of the universe. She went on. "Recently while I was watching him, I noticed that at times his chakra would flare slightly." That's perfectly normal for growing kids. It is always flaring like that in one way or another as they grow. So does their chakra. It's why a genin's chakra control is typically so bad. He didn't have to tack on the rest of the explanation since she already knew. "It's not his chakra that flares, sir." The Hokage's pipe fell out of his mouth and it clattered on the floor. Bloody hell, that pipe was a gift. He hoped it hadn't cracked or spilled tobacco everywhere. "Explain," he said tersely while his god of shinobi persona came in force over his grandfather, Professor persona. "It doesn't come at regular intervals or anything, but when it does, it's not all that noticeable. It blends into the boy's regular chakra. Sort of like it's hard to see stains on clothes that are close to the same color. It just blends in really well. Like finding the brown dust on brown pants. There are slight variances in the chakra shading, making it a bit darker than normal. When this does happen, his senses tend to become more acute than they already are." "How do you know this?" the old man asked, readjusting his pipe which had been collected from the floor, which had miraculously kept all tobacco in it after the rough landing. "I swear that he knows we're there." The Hokage lifted an eyebrow. "He gives this strange look, at or near where we are. You know where you think you see something strange but it really is normal. You sure you're not a bit paranoid? Not when he goes and talks." "Talks? You know how I reported to you a while back that while not antisocial, he does have a tendency to avoid loud noises, and some other distracting things. He gets along better with his caretakers. The kid's got a nice vocabulary for his age." Knowing Anbu like the Hokage did, that meant several things. Each of them with their own set of problems. Double hell. Just imaging the amount of paperwork the kid could cause was staggering. "I also reported a while back that the kid is a genius with art." Sarutobi nodded. He remembered the picture the kid had drawn on an entire wall. In very good detail. Until you noticed two things. Two very disturbing things. 1. The point of view. It was if you were coming in over the wall in the southwest. 2. The picture the kid drew was of Konoha, exactly as it was, minus people, because he quote, "can't ever get peoples right." The day of the Kyuubi attack. About 4.5 years ago. He felt guiltily about not honoring a dead man's wishes, but seeing some of the looks the clan heads and some prominent and honored and praiseworthy, upstanding citizens gave the boy, he didn't. It did keep a lot of potential problems from coming to surface. Like treason and assassins and riots and mobs. That would have been hell on the kid to know that he caused all of this trouble. Hiding the boy from the citizens of Konoha was easy. From ninjas, while not as easy, many had never seen the kid, thus allowing some amity. Hiding the boy from Danzo was a whole different ball game. Danzo continued to press that he was a threat, stirring people up. He was pretty sure that if he gather up all the inflamed citizens' letters, he would have enough to recycle enough paper, as toilet paper, to last the offices in the Hokage Tower for a year or 3. Sarutobi said, wanting to relax for a bit. At one time the kid went and asked, "What do y'all think?" He had just done another of his wall drawings, that he was planning on painting. There was an Anbu in the room at the time. "Are you sure he doesn't have an imaginary friend? Since all the other toddlers are loud and he likes the quiet as you said, he could just make a friend up. He doesn't lack the talent for it." "Thanks Hokage-sama. I hadn't thought of that, maybe I was just antsy. Seeing that wall every day is sort of disturbing. You see something new every time you look at it." "What's new?" "Some interesting graffiti. A water tower or two, a few new trees." That was the end of that discussion. Still left him feeling like he'd been put in a lukewarm hell though, and then wrung out through one of those old-fashioned wash tubs. With Naruto he was frustrated, it just wouldn't work. It didn't look right. With a sigh he mumbled, "Hell, this one is even worse than my earlier one." He compared the piece of paper to another one, and a third and fourth one. They all got the same critic. They quite frankly sucked in his opinion. To anyone else seeing a kid younger than 5 who drew better than stick figures of the typical 7-year-old. Hell, he drew better than most adults. People were to him unattainable. He just couldn't get it right. People were complicated, often unnecessarily so. They liked making everything difficult, it seemed like. Then he felt what he called the twitch come over him. He felt a twitch in his side on his lower back. Then everything became clearer. Like he was looking underwater before, and now everything was clearer and sharper. Everything was also louder and more pungent now. If he wasn't careful, he'd wind up with a monster migraine of mammoth proportions. However, it had its advantages. He could now see his friend. The summer Shinigami, as he had called himself. He had to feel pain to see the guy, but pain was pretty temporary for him, so they didn't get to spend as much time as they'd like together. "Yo," said the summer Shinigami. He as per usual had his death mask, a rather frightening creation, with an anguished, tortured and bleeding face and horns, pushed up and to the side. His dark teal hair with the odd strands of algae green and purple was in a controlled messy flop around his face. His huge, glowing aquamarine eyes blinked, just not in the normal way. He had said it was a benefit of being part Kappa. A thin membrane, the third eyelid, slid back up. He was dressed in a fashion many would call sloppy, but in the slightly controlled sloppiness. Under the typical garb of his job. If Naruto had ever met and remembered the Toad Sennin, he would say their outfits looked remarkably similar. His reaping weapon was one typical among Kappas, as his friend had explained. He also had the ceremonial scythe too. Naruto glared at him. The Kappa sighed. "Well, now you finally notice that I'm here," the sloppy dude said, sounding all angsty. He got up to his feet. "You, the only being in this miserable wretched excuse of a village, are the only one who can see me. Much less hear me." He threw his hands in the air, for dramatics and effect, before an overly exaggerated suffering sigh. "And then you ignore me," he whined. He got all teary-eyed, and then got in Naruto's face. "You ignore me." He turned around, so his back was facing the kid. "Ignore me," he yelled dramatically. He then went moped dramatically in the corner. Naruto's friend had a flair for the dramatics. He said that he got that from his mom. He didn't press further. The guy was strange enough. Friendly though. Said he had the most boring job in the world. Naruto didn't see how. You got to take people's souls, for Kami's sake. Hell, that even beat being a shinobi. What Naruto didn't know was that Danzo had finally found him. He would make Naruto's life for the next few years a living hell. It was pretty empty in the cafeteria of Konoha's hospital. In fact, there were only a couple of off-duty or on-break nurses sitting down drinking tea or other beverages. A chunin with a leg in a cast and had crutches that was muttering darkly at the annoyance of both the cafeteria lunch ladies, despite the fact that there were 3 guys on the culinary staff, and an old man wearing robes and a blonde kid young enough to be his grandkid, if not his great-grandkid. "You're saying the staff here is mean?" the old dude said, a toothpick in his mouth instead of his usual pipe in compliance with the hospital's rules. "Yep. They kept me here for a whole extra day," the kid lamented. "It's so unfair. I mean, we know how all this happened and all," and in a way lower volume he continued, "after the tree in my legs in through. No, intro. Introduction. Yeah," he said subdued. "I was fine after 3 days or so. You ran half the nurse staff ragged. I was 3, and bored. I didn't even have a window to look out of. You're not much older now. You're not even 5. I know. Just you wait. A couple more months. Then what?" the Hokage asked, moving the toothpick around like it was his pipe. The kid had gotten good with pranks and traps. He had dyed an Anbu. Neon orange did not look good on a gray Anbu uniform. He still didn't know where he got the dye from. Neither did the poor Anbu watchers, which were questioned quite thoroughly on how exactly he had procured it. "I'll show you then." The blonde kid gave a huge whiskered grin, with a hint of, "I know something you don't know," tossed in for good measure. He sighed. He wondered whether or not the Anbu guard's named Kat's suggestion was worthwhile and thus worth the effort. However, he only had her report to go by. Well, hers and part of what another operative had observed. hence why he was subtly interrogating a young Naruto. So are you going to tell me what happened to you to put you here? Yeah, but can I get something to eat first? Without even waiting for the Hokage's full permission, given in a nod that had just started to the kid, went through the non-existent line. It was hospital food after all. He quickly came back, with a half-loaded tray, and started to shovel it down the excuse of a child's mouth. It was much more like a tunnel to a black hole.
I guess teaching brats manners isn't high on the orphanage's list. The Hokage thought with some distance humor to himself. Outside he said, "You have teeth to chew your food, Naruto."
Isby zit weoli call thab himpoutent. Shoo, swallow. Then repeat what you just said. Talking with your mouth full is rude, you know.
Hiruzen Sarutobi watched as it was downed with only the slightest of help, thanks to milk. He was rather incredulous. It was like watching a mini Choza eat at a pie contest. Not a sight you want to see, but you're currently in too much shock to look away.
Is it really all that important? Naruto asked again. Chewing, I mean? It helps you to digest your food properly, so it digests properly, preventing stomach cramps and allows your body to get all of its energy easier. Now let's get back on subject. I already have my report from my Anbu, but I want your side of the story. Oh, okay, makes sense I guess, seeing as how you're paying the bill.
Well, you know how the caretakers at orphanage are afraid of me and let me come and go at will, right? The old man nodded. He'd be talking to the caretakers. To let a child roam at will was inexcusable, especially one as trouble-prone as Naruto. I think they're afraid of me for some reason or another. I mean, I really haven't pranked them as bad as those masked guys. I guess they're still scared over the toad spider pond thingy. Not that I blame them. Hiruzen thought. It was scary how good the kid was with the pranks. If being harassed by toads and spiders weren't enough, being led into a pond, only to get pushed into it, only to find out the algae wasn't algae, just some fibers and a lot of green food dye. 3 months later, the matron still was slightly green around the gills and was now deathly afraid of spiders and frogs.
Anyway, I can come and go at will, so I was spending the day, just really doing nothing. Then later I realized that it was getting late, so I'd better get back, so I took a couple of shortcuts.
Then these 5 ninja guys show up and they were all, "Come with us, kid."
But I was like, "Make me, you big meanies." Anyways, then the masked cat lady came and poked one of them in the chest and he fell, after he swung a kunai towards me. But another dude took out his sword and started swinging at her, and she pulled out a sword and they were both swinging, but one of the bullies was gonna get her from behind, so I told her to look out, and she kicked him, but before he fell he tossed a kunai at me, and I tried to dodge but it was really fast so it got my arm. So what happened next? So far, it was a very good report for a kid who was barely 4 years old. Well, since the masked cat lady turned, it was a kitty cat mask, wasn't it? Not a tiger or leopard. Anyway, to kick the guy sneaking up behind her, the sword dude sliced her arm good, and there was blood everywhere when she got him back, but before he went down he stabbed her with a kunai. Then the guy who got kicked got up, and he and the other two went and circled around her, me and the tree. I backed up against the tree, 'cause they all had out weapons now, and I only had the kunai in my shoulder. So, knowing I wouldn't die from blood loss, 'cause of the whole tree introduction thingy, I pulled the kunai out to at least give me something useful than a stick. Meanwhile, they were saying something, but I don't really remember it at the time since my head was a little fuzzy while I healed.
The cat lady then said something like, "You know the penalty for breaking the Hokage's law. So I guess that's pretty strict." So, one the guys then went and called me some names, and tossed a few weapons at me. Cat lady went and moved and knocked the weapons away. She hurt her leg worser from where she was stabbed earlier, while the guy who got kicked went and tossed some more weapons at me. She stopped most of them, but a few got past her, and hurt me and her.
I know she didn't have my own personal gift, so I was freaking out on how much blood she'd lost, so I said rather stupid to guys who were trying to kill me, "We have to get her to the hospital." On the inside, Sarutobi was thinking that it could only be expected. He wasn't even 5, he was allowed to panic and be stupid. If not when you were a kid, then when could you? Then again, it just wasn't in his character to do so, despite how young he was, and he could see traces of the man that he had given his hat to several short years earlier. The determination to be the better man, the innate kindness, the eager energy to please and the core of steel that was his word, which he followed to the very day he sacrificed himself and his last bit of family for the benefit of the village. Going on, the weapon points were really getting irritating, so I guess something was on it, but it really wasn't really annoying, it just made me sleepy, so I pulled them out, and spun around and asked Cat Lady if she was alright. After that I guess whatever was on those weapons took effect and I passed out. Then I woke up here, and was held against my will for an extra day.
The Hokage flinched slightly at the sudden increase in noise, wanting to make him rub his ear. At least the boy wasn't paying too much damn attention to his memories, else he'd know he'd killed those other three while he spun around, effectively tossing the weapons into vital points at high velocity due to his quick turn. Those may have only been lucky strikes, but still, the damn kid had unparalleled luck just for that alone.
Now Naruto, the Hokage chuckled, you remember the deck of cards I gave you? How about I teach you some card games? He did that so the little guy had something to do, while recuperating from his tree introduction thingy, as Naruto called it. There was no better was to describe it, since he had met the tree from the fall and hit just about every damn branch on the way down the giant tree. The Hokage didn't miss the fact that the nearby nurses had looks on their faces which effectively said, "We loves you forever now and always Sandame-sama." The kid must have done a number or two on them. Yeah. I've got them somewhere. As Naruto searched his person, he found them in his pant leg lining. Found them. Now, you know how to play Go Fish? The day would go down in many of the hospital's memories as the game grew intense, and the Hokage lost 500 Ryu in an hour. He now fully sympathized with his student Tsunade now. Losing all the time just made you want to win more. A couple of hours after losing horribly bad to Naruto in cards and sending him on his own way back to the orphanage, the Hokage was visiting someone in the intensive care unit. It was the person Naruto referred to as Cat Lady or Cat Mask Lady or Mask Cat, or any combination of the names. She was currently higher than the clouds, on pain medication. She was on bed rest for the next week, and off duty for the rest of the month. This would explain why she was bored. Even high, you could only entertain yourself for a while, and given that she was a ninja, she could think much faster and clearer than a civvy on a bad day with a head cold, and that is why she asked about her unofficial ward. He's fine and currently 500 Ryu, equals $50 USD, richer as of 2 hours ago. I lost that in a game of goldfish. He beat you in goldfish, was what first came to mind and what was first out of her mouth. And war, old maid, crazy eights, and 5-card poker, all of which I taught him to play. No card tricks? Or bridge? She slurred on her words. I didn't think it wise. We also needed more players for bridge, but none seemed inclined to play with the pair of us. After a few minutes, who has my shift? You go. Oh, the lady residing on the bed said. Even being bandaged, in a hospital gown, on a thin hospital bed with thinner, she still exuded a slight regal or noble air. She's nice in a tough older sister type way. You empathizing with Naruto? The Hokage asked. It wasn't that he could blame her for doing so. The worst fate any mother could face was not the death of your child as some would have you to believe. The worst fate was to be separated from your child and him not even know you exist and to not able to do anything differently. Stupid, annoying clan laws. He thought with a hint of leftover passion from his younger days. Stick in asses, take it and beat it, she said, proving that you can never fully retract a mother's unrelenting desire to make whoever harmed her kid in any way pay for it in blood and bones. Mothers were scary in that way. It's just that she'll be even scarier once she is off the pain meds. I take that as a yes. I won't reprimand or replace you for this, it just makes you a better protector for Naruto. Just don't let your emotions get the better of you next time. I'm Anbu. Didn't get there because who I was married to. After a couple moments of quiet chuckling, the wounded Anbu asked, what my bout idea?
A little blond boy was walking in the street with a cream and dark-colored cat on his shoulders. This was after he'd ditched his Anbu escort in the park, when he'd scampered soundlessly up the tree the cat was in. The cat took a bit more convincing to come with him though. Then there were a few other problems.
Who is the guy with blue fur beside you and me? Yeah, I know, pretty kitty. Just ignore the guy. This was why Naruto liked cats. They could see his friend. However, they could and sometimes were annoying too. He didn't know all the answer to the questions of the kitty. The cat just shifted on his shoulders. He seemed pounds fun. Can he hear me as well? All right, I guess, but you know I can only understand you, cat. He gets a vague sense of what you're saying though. Why? I dunno, next time I feel the twitch, I'll tell you, if I know then. That's when I can ask that guy. Otherwise I can't hear him. Tail flick under his nose. You are a funny two legs. Most need to be trained a bit before they understand what we say. Then they feed us, or leave water or change the dirt. By the way, why did you ask me to come funny two leg? Oh, so now you ask. Annoying cat, but let's face it, I need a favor. The tail swayed. What sort of favor? What sort of request needs my skills? Fine. The boy said. I want you to do this to a certain person. He then described the person and what he wanted done. The cat leaned out and looked at Naruto, starting an impromptu staring contest. The cat blinked. I want to know what sort of payment I will get. Payment? Catnip and tuna maybe. Definitely table scraps though. The cat meowed. Good table scraps at least till leaf fall.
I could get another cat, you know. Be cheaper. Hiss. But how would you know they would get it done? I demand at least 1 moon worth of table scraps for the job, another for your insult, at least. If you ever want my business again, it will have to be more.
Fine, for the next 2 moons. When and if I can, he added. The cat then launched off the boy's shoulders, and became a fuzzy blur as it raced around the corner. Good enough. Keep up your end of the agreement, funny two-legger, and we shall both see a profitable future.
Naruto sighed. He didn't like lying to the old man. He knew he had hurt the guys. How bad? He didn't know and he didn't care. If he was really lucky they'd be dead, since he'd recently provided evidence he could gamble, and pretty damn well too he might add, that lent some more credence that they'd be dead.
His thoughts drifted elsewhere. He could probably make some money gambling if he went pro. Then again, he had the feeling he'd lose his luck if he did. He'd make a better ninja, that way he'd show them all not to ignore him. Even the Hokage, when he'd finally dug out from all the paperwork, acted like it was a duty forced upon him against his will, and thus did it reluctantly. He'd show them all, sometime later he will, just not now.
After he finished his room for sure. By finishing, that meant finishing his mural of the village on his wall. Maybe then he'd go on and do something else. Like the Hokage Tower or the monument.
He slowly strolled back to the orphanage, and if they locked it again, he'd find a way to get in. He had a screwdriver. If it came down to it, he could unhinge the door and rehinge it if need be. He was happily thinking about how to do the Hokage monument in exactly that particular flair of his. It would have to be flashy though, something everyone would see at once. He then decided to do the Hokage monument in broad daylight.
But how? Coming up with no obvious answers, he put that on the back burner, and brought the tower to the fore. That he could do. After all, they had some stuff in there from the pre-village days and possible some stuff from before the clan wars too. That stuff was mostly junk. He preferred to think of it as something not used to its fullest. What was the word? Since he couldn't think of the word, he went with use. Used to its fullest use.
Now that he was free from the hellhole, aka the hospital, he wondered how best to piss off the Anbu Watchers and the Uchiha MPs. He had no idea what MP meant, but that was what everyone called them. His sticky paste. This required more thought. The next morning the MPs were not happy campers. Especially since none of their gear was spared the wrath of the blonde devil child, and neither was the desks and other office gear. In fact, there was even a cement block that was stuck to the back of the roof that had a scarecrow, as in not a typical scarecrow, since it had an eye patch and a line of stitches on it, that was also stuck to the block that was stuck to the building. Kakashi went though his day wondering what he'd done to make the Uchiha clan mad at him and building up some impressive paranoia.
Meanwhile, Naruto was putting some finishing touches on his bedroom wall. Feeling the twitch, he quickly looked around. Seeing his friend do his embarrassing monologue of being ignored, again he quickly smiled.
So, he said, dipping the tips of his brush in paint again, why me? Naruto muttered. It was easier to talk aloud than to talk the other way that Kai had shown him. Kai had said something about freaking furballs and thinking they're too good for any bipedal species. His friend, whose actual name was too damn hard to pronounce for a human, and thus settled for a basic Kappa name that Naruto could pronounce, which was Kai. In Kappa it meant flash flood. In human, it meant release. Why you, for what, dude? Kai cocked his head, showing off his blue tresses. At Naruto's grunt, which the cause was he just messed up on a couple of trees he was painting. Kai, got it. Oh, that. You mean how you can see me and other supernatural beings? Yes, he murmured. He'd fixed the tree. Oh, you know the Kyubi, I mean it's not like it's a big secret or anything, in the supernatural society being sealed in Ya and all. Well, dude, put it this way, while ninjas can use spiritual energy, human beings have to mix it with physical energy. That creates chakra. Kyubi being a biju is part of natural energy, and part spiritual energy. That's the Kyubi's chakra, dude. Thus your chakra system is like 1/3 spiritual chakra, 1/2 physical chakra, and 1/6 nature chakra. Naruto groaned. He needed to wash his brush, but how to get down? Going on. Average-wise most ninja chakra is a mix of about 2/3 physical energy and about 1/3 mental or spiritual energy. Even if they say it's half and half, dude, they're wrong. Since you have an abnormal amount of spiritual energy for a human, this would make you immune to most mental-based attacks. Like the genjutsu. I think that's what the ninjas dudes call it. I call it, at most, a pathetic attempt. Well duh, how else would he get anything done for his job, reaping souls, if he was being stopped by ninja? Of course, Kai was better. It was necessary.
Naruto was wondering what to do about his brush, his paint, and the fact that when he got down from here he was going to fix that problem. How? He could modify a standing lamp into a tall table for temporary use. But where would he put it, since one of the people who ran the orphanage would surely break it if he left in here? Or,
How? He said, not wanting to get off the stool on the chair. A lot of determination, dude, with a bit of skill, luck and talent. Combine that with basic knowledge of how human chakra works, well, what I gleaned from a couple of different sources, dude, he said, bashful. Where? Naruto asked, looking for a particular tube of paint. It was burnt sienna. Possible his favorite color after orange, black, red, silver and blue. He needed it to do detail on a building. After he cleaned his brush. Which meant he had to get down. Down off the stool on the chair. Oh, I stalked a couple of those freaky-eyed people, and crashed some classes at the ninja school, dude. Kai responded. Naruto glared at him. Don't you have a job? When I'm not on call for my job, dude. Duh. I work the oddest hours. Freaky-eyed people. Naruto thought. How many people have ultramarine, teal-blue beacons of light that call themselves eyes? And how many have third eyelids? None that he knew of. Then again, he didn't know any other supernatural beings. Then again, they were called supernatural for a reason. Though that was a bigger oxymoron than most. Really, it was. Suddenly he became aware of someone approaching him. He'd use him to clean his brush, and get the paint. A foxy grin shone on the Gaki's face.
a few minutes earlier, a rather annoyed and thought-occupied Chunin and a really short Jonin were walking side by side, down the street.
The short Jonin said, so, the guy we're escorting to the tower, for Hokage-sama is important? The Chunin replied, yay, and nay. Depends on who you ask. So Hokage-sama didn't tell you anything about who we're escorting? No, the short Jonin admitted. I was going to give him my mission report, but he sent me to tag along with you.
Ah, the Chunin said, as if the short Jonin's answer just revealed the purpose of life.
After a few minutes of walking, the Chunin said something else. The guy we're escorting is one Uzumaki Naruto. Apparently the Hokage is concerned about the guy. I heard a rumor a group of our ninja tried to kill him, so Hokage is taking protective action of his ward. I haven't heard that rumor. One would think that I would, the Jonin said. True, true. You would if the rumor had floated on normal village gossip channels. So, what's with the Hokage's ward thing? Oh, that. Easy enough to answer. Each and every orphan is placed in an orphanage until they've received a basic education. Reading, writing, arithmetic and other stuff to make good citizens. When they reach a certain age to where they could take care of their basic needs is where the ward thing comes in.
The orphanage kicks you out once you reach 16 or so, but most people are adopted out, or have moved out on their own beforehand. The ward thing is if for some reason, you're kicked out or leave earlier, you'll be provided for. Like if you, I dunno, become a genin. You'll leave the orphanage, and have a small apartment provided for you. You'll also get a small stipend until you reach the age of 16 or become a chunin or higher.
So what's with all the older people hating him? This is where my other profession when I'm not being a ninja is handy. Now give me 10 Ryu, the Chunin said. Why? Said the stoic Jonin. I want to buy some Pocky, the Chunin said. The Jonin looked at him like he was crazy with an almost patented stare. I mean client confidentiality. The Jonin gave the lawyer Chunin 10 Ryu. How is it he has a secret so dangerous that you'd have to do that? And doesn't that work the other way around? The short, stoic Jonin asked. Blame old Yandi. Now remember Biju. Then think the word Jinchuriki. You're imply that, now don't say that. I'd have to kill you. Hokage's law and all. Now then you want to hear something else I heard interesting about him? HNN. It doesn't bother me, but didn't you just break that law? No, those laws were passed to help our temporary charge make friends in his own age group. Also it prevents parents from telling their kids. By the way, word is, from my Anbu pal is that the little guy can tell where they're posted at. Really? That's interesting. The stoic little guy said, with as much enthusiasm that could be present at a funeral. Well, if you could get past him, you could show your stealth is better than the ANBUs. The Chunin said. The Jonin didn't respond. If you manage to touch him before he notices, I'll buy you all the Pocky you want for the next month. The Chunin said with a sigh, closing his eyes for a few fractions of a second. When he opened his eyes, a half-second later, the Jonin was gone. Damn, I knew he liked Pocky, but not that much. He then continued to stroll lazily to the orphanage. The Pocky-loving Jonin snuck into Naruto's closet-sized bedroom, actually once was a closet at one time, in the orphanage, intent on his mission. He quickly scanned the room once, twice. He saw a small bed, a small makeshift milk crate desk, and his target on top of a stool on top of a chair. He scanned the room was he saw the wall. He just stared. And stared. And stared. Shorty, if you're gonna drool, I'm gonna kick you out, Naruto said. The Jonin quickly turned to face Naruto. I'm not short, he muttered. R2? Naruto said cheerfully. Now could you hand me that cup on the table? The Jonin handed it to him, seeing no reason not to, not short. Yeah, you are dude. Naruto said, washing his brush, before getting most of the water off onto towel, rag he had draped over his shoulder. I just haven't hit my growth spurt yet. Besides you're shorter than me, he muttered, his eyes slightly twitching. I have a reason to be short. I'm not even 5 yet. You're like what 12 or 13 or 11. Put this back. He handed the short Jonin his cup. I'm 11. The short Jonin said matter-of-factly, putting the cup back on the makeshift desk. See, you're like 3 times older than I am. Now can you hand me the burnt sienna dude? Naruto asked. The Jonin complied, but added, my name's not dude.
Well, I don't know it, so you're dude, Mr. Dude. Anyways, since you've got the vest, and all, are you here to take over the freaky-eyed people's spots? 'Cause they kind of suck when it comes to hide and go seek. One's in the tree in the front and the other is on the roof of this place. Besides, I think the guy who's supposed to go find them quit a loon time ago.
HNN. So that rumor was true. You do know it's considered rude to demand a person's name? He inquired softly. Go figure. But since you're all ninja awesome and all, and you came to find me, and you don't have weapons out, the old man sent you. So you should know my name.
Can't argue with that logic. The Jonin thought, so he said, my name is Uchiha Itachi. He stuck his hand out to shake it with Naruto's little one. Then realized, wait, weapons drawn. Can't dude-san, I'll fall off. Naruto said, perched on his stool on top of the chair.
Couldn't you just move your palette and brush to one hand? Not if I want to save my brush from going through paint, he responded. Did you just call me dude again? Can't really remember Mr. Dude? Can't you at least say my name? It's Itachi Uchiha. Got it. Uchiha-san. Now where have I heard that name before? He put on a serious face for a 4-year-old. If you could only minus the whisker marks. Then it wouldn't have been so cute. From the gossips. I created a big stir when I graduated early, Itachi stated coldly. No, not you. I mean the Uchiha name. Oh, that. The Uchiha clan runs the military police. Our clan symbol is on the police station, even the MP's uniforms. Oh, the blonde said. For a few moments he was deadly quiet. You could almost hear the wheels of his mind turn. Are you here to arrest me? 'Cause I don't think that they'd catch me that quickly.
Catch you what? For painting the scene with the fish, and setting up the fisher guy.
That was you? Itachi asked incredulously. His dad had raved about that all morning over breakfast. Insulting the Uchiha. Yeah, whatever was up there, it looked a lot like those fishing bobs things I saw a couple of times, so I thought, why not finish the scene?
But where did you get the fisherman? I got him from one of the rooms at the place that the fishing bob was on.
The clan symbol is a fan. Not a fishing bobber. Oh, sorry. I'll make it up later. How's Tuesday? What? Itachi asked, confused by the words, make it up.
By this time the lazy Chunin had managed to get up to Naruto's room. Oi, Itachi, is the little runt ready? I've got to take him to Hokage-sama. He opened the door and started to step in, missing the littlest kid's face.
No dude. Naruto said, reaching out. The mess above the door fell on the Chunin, while Naruto fell on Itachi. Since there is a law that states for every action there is an opposite and equal reaction, the stool fell on the makeshift desk, sending a couple of paint tubes and containers on top of the already thoroughly paint-covered trio. As they sorted themselves out of each other, Naruto picked up his paints, quickly putting them in their hiding spots, which were so good, if it wasn't for the two seeing where he put them, they never would have guessed they were there. After all, who'd expect a portion of the wall could be removed? Much less how quickly he did that, or how well hidden it was. Itachi was mentally kicking himself for missing that. Fitting that part of the wall back, Naruto picked up the newspaper on the floor, making a nice, folded pile. The two watched on in semi-shock. After all, what sane person could fold a newspaper? The paint splotches were effectively hidden in the pile. Seeing that everything was back in its place and cleaned up, he went into a nearby bathroom and scrubbed his hands, face and hair.
Upon seeing them still standing still, he scrunched up his little face, whisker marks and all. You guys better not be dripping paint on my floor. After all, what would your family say, Itachi-san? They quickly cleaned up, or as much as they could. After all, the Chunin had a nice yellow smiley face of paint on his back. When it didn't come off with water, Itachi looked at Naruto and Naruto only said, oil paint. About 30 or so minutes later, Naruto was bored. Itachi, aka Dude-san, had left shortly after bringing him here. He'd talked with the old man for about a minute or so, then left him. The Chunin guy, he was not getting the classification of dude, he wasn't awesome enough, and the old man here. The Chunin and old man Hokage were arguing about some grown-up adult person thingy. It obviously involved a bit of papers. Bored, he strolled over to the bookcases, looking at different books and magazines. Seeing an orange one, his favorite color, his first impulse was to get the old man to reach it for him, but he was busy, so he went with option number 2. He quickly built a small stack, in the shape of a staircase, to reach the orange book, and decided since there were 2 other books beside it, he decided they might be worth his time. The spine of the book to the left said, Idiot's Guide to Sealing. Not that he knew what that was. It had a small design on the side along with a picture of a brush. That's what sealed Naruto's interest in the book. The book to the right had a design of the elemental cycle on it, not that he knew what that was either, so it went with the stack of what he was going to look through, and possibly keep. He stuck the books with pictures on the spine in the universal fern plant present in every office, waiting room in the universe, covered the orange book with a magazine, while he stuck the other books back in the shelves. The Hokage called on him halfway through, telling him to put them back, and he put the books back looking sad, while he slumped back to the chair. He then looked the dictionary's picture of Sulk Fest. He then started to go through the magazines nearby, snapping the magazine's pages loudly. The Hokage then looked at him sternly. He then went back to the papers him and the Chunin were arguing about. Now Naruto grinned. He pulled out the orange book and thumbed through it, picking out the few words he knew. He didn't know a whole lot, and eventually lost interest, and was about ready to declare to the world it was boring, but decided against it. He'd show the old man. It was then he decided to throw it at the old man. He did toss it at the old man, as the old Hokage was turning around about to ask Naruto something that was very important to his future and protection. With reflexes born out of having survived 2 ninja wars, he dodged the flying orange book. The poor Chunin didn't have that advantage and thus got a face full of the limited gold edition of the first of the Ika Ika series. Signed by the author. Naruto. The Hokage said, "Why'd you throw that book?" A tick mark had appeared on his face. "I was bored, and you both were ignoring me." Naruto had managed to pull off the puppy eyes no jutsu to perfection only available to those 10 and under. "We were just getting everything ready for a surprise for you. Now how would you like to be a ninja?" "That would be awesome. I'd be such a cool, super strong ninja. I could." He continued on in the way only kids under 10 can do. "Naruto," the Hokage said, trying to get his attention. He repeated Naruto's name, which got the same result. He then proceeded to, "Naruto." After that, the blonde, now apparently hyper, shut up. "Now then, would you like to attend the academy to learn to be a ninja?" "You mean I can?" Naruto said, using his puppy eyes again. "But didn't that start like 3 months ago? Wouldn't I have to go next year?" "That's where the nice Chunin that you hit with that book would come in. He'd help you catch up to the rest of the class." "Yeah, the Hokage sees that I'm awesome and now wants me to be a super strong, super cool ninja who'd one day take over his job. 'Cause I'm just that awesome." The old Sarutobi ruffled his hair. Whatever the old man said after the blonde's outburst was tuned out. A couple of feet away, the Chunin was muttering with a huge blush on his face, "Is that possible?" Now positively enamored with the book. However, in the future, Naruto would think that Jiraiya's books were boring. The two would have many arguments about that. Naruto and the recently enamored with Ika Ika Chunin walked down the street towards the academy. The Chunin was busy analyzing the situation in the way only a really damn good lawyer could. With no feeling at all except for maybe a bit of greed and wrath. Maybe that's why his nickname was Kumasora, the Razor. Hell may hath no fury like a woman scorned, but the people who came up with that saying had never seen a tax lawyer at tax time, with a person who had a huge account, came to due his taxes about 3 weeks late. That same type of insane hate seemed to radiate off the people who saw the boy. They people on the street really didn't act on the hate, except for glares. The boy and the Chunin knew that, but it didn't stop them from knowing that some people didn't stop at just the glares. Naruto smiled at a few people who passed by, but that really didn't include very many civilians. "Boy, stop hiding behind my leg like a scared little girl," the Chunin said. Naruto instantly let go of his leg, and started to walk beside the Chunin, in what the Chunin knew was false bravado. "I'm not a little girl," the blonde growled out, in what was probably supposed to be terrifying, intimidating voice. Unfortunately, the Chunin wasn't 4 or so and thus wasn't scared in the slightest. "I didn't say you were. I said you were acting like one. There is a difference. Not a major one, but shinobi are expected to pick up on the subtle things like that." Okay. I'll show everyone that I could be an excellent ninja," he said with excitement, even though it was said pretty quietly. After another corner, they turned, and continued walking down that street. That was when Naruto asked, "Mister, aren't you like a lawyer guy? But you've got a vest, so you're a ninja too. How does that work?" "My nickname is Kumasora. I answer to it most of the time anyway. But I'll tell you when we get to the academy. I often fill in for the other teachers there, when they want to get some training time in, or they have to go for a mission. So, after I catch up to the other students, I could still have you as a teacher. Yeah, typically I watch over the kids when they're in study hall." "What's study hall?" the blonde asked in ignorance. "It's time set aside for the students so they can do their assignments. The academy gives out some pretty hefty amounts of homework. It is kind of well known for forcing knowledge down people's throats," he admitted abashed. Naruto's face made a picture of disgust. "That's not a very pretty picture," he said. The Chunin chuckled in an evil lawyer chuckle. The kid was right. It wasn't a very pretty picture but a very humorous one. When they arrived at the academy gates, Naruto stopped. Waiting. The Chunin stopped as well, seeing his charge stop. "That's the academy. You'll probably spend the next couple of years here. So ready to go?" "In a bit. Once you tell me how you came to be both a lawyer guy and a ninja," Naruto said stubbornly. "Ah, how to start, how to start," the Chunin said. Finding a place to start, he started to tell his tale. "Well, I was an orphan like you. I did a lot of stupid stuff when I was a kid. But that's not part of the story. Anyway, I decided to go to the academy, to try to be a shinobi. A lot of people drop out the first 6 months of the program, but I decided to tough it out for a year. If not, I could always go to be a lawyer, since I developed a small fascination of it since it got me into the academy when I couldn't pay. Basically, I spent a lot of my time split between the two. The way I figured it, if I ever got seriously hurt or injured or just decided to quit being a ninja, I could always be a lawyer. Better than just giving up then and there. After I got through the first year, I went through the second, and then before I knew what hit me, I'd finished the academy and became a genin. I still studied law when I could though. Eventually, my genin team and I took the chunin exam, where I made chunin. I also passed the bar exam, the test you have to take to become a lawyer that same month. I was actually more worried about the bar exam than the chunin exam. Now that you know how that happened, I can do an evaluation to see how much I have to work with. That was the short, bloodless version of his life in less than a minute. And Evlav what? Naruto asked. A test to see how much I have to catch you up on. Like, how much you know about chakra. So how much do you know about it? What's it made out of? It's made out of, mental and physical energy. Naruto said, seeing how Kai had said that the humans would freak out if they knew that they existed. So now he had to lie, or think quick. I didn't think he'd get that. The Chunin thought. How do you know that? Sorry, but is that something you really have to answer at the academy? How do you know that? No, but I was just curious. The law ninja remarked to the smart ass. So would you tell me? I overheard some ninjas talking about it. They were about as old as Dude San, but they didn't have the vest so they weren't as awesome as him. Dude San. The Chunin said. It really couldn't be. Yeah, that's what I call the guy you were with yesterday. The Chunin smirked. Oh, Itachi-kun, I'm gonna have so much fun teasing you about that. After ending that evil little reveille, he asked, so do you know how to use chakra? I'm not really sure, but doesn't it involve seals? Yes and no. Some ninja techniques don't require seals. They just require chakra control. How do you control chakra? You focus your chakra. How do you do that? It takes concentration. What's that word mean? This conversation is going anywhere like this. Okay. You know how you focus on your bedroom wall when you're painting it. Naruto nodded. It was really hard to get all the details otherwise. Okay. Then when you're painting it, you are concentrating on it. So, if I concentrate my chakra, I can control it. Again, yes and no. If you concentrate your chakra on a certain point on your body, you can get something to stick to you like a leaf. Or vice versa. Most of those techniques help you build your chakra reserves, and refine your technique, so when you do jutsus, you could accurately take a guess of how much chakra it needs. So different jutsus use different amounts of chakra. Yes, and they're based on ranks of E through A, and then the S-class jutsu. All those are just indications of how hard those jutsus are to do, or how much chakra is needed. Okay, I get the hard part, but you're saying that a really easy jutsu could be like a class, because of how much chakra it takes. I don't get that. That's because you didn't let me finish. Now then, most of the techniques you'll learn at the academy, in the 3rd or 4th year mind you will be E rank. Then there are a couple of D rank jutsus that will become available when you become a genin. When you're a chunin you start getting into the C rank jutsus, most of those are really basic elemental jutsu. The B rank jutsus tend to be more for jonin, or really advanced chunin. The A ranks are specifically taught only to jonin, or it is up to whoever knows the technique or techniques. Now then most of the S rank jutsus are kinjutsus, based on moral grounds, or the fact that they're sacrificial, or kill the user or something like that. Oh, thanks for explaining all that, so are you going to ask me about that stuff? I think I could answer that stuff. The chunin wanted to smile. That's a really smart kid. Making me explain it for him. Now for the kicker. Now what do you know about the ninja hierarchy? Hierarchy. Chain of command. Who can order who? That sort of stuff. Well the Hokage is on top. 'Cause he's like the best ninja here, followed by the masked guys. Then you've got the ninjas like Dude San, followed by you, then the academy graduates, then the students. The Chunin's gray-green eye was twitching. He's correct, which is kind of amazing considering he has no formal education on this. Outside of the Chunin's thoughts, he went and asked, so what are those classes actually called? You've got the students, the graduates, the Chunin, the Jonin, and then the cage. Let's clear this up. Starting from the top, you've got the cage, followed by the Anbu, the Jonin, the special Jonin, the Chunin, the Genin, and the ninja cadets. The Chunin explained. Oh, so that's what they're called. I didn't know. Gomen. Oh, Gaki don't start. Gomen. Ing me. You just didn't know. No problem at all. Now then, let's do the actual test. Actual test. Yeah, think of this as a cross between a quick review and quiz. Now then, let's get you started. Naruto had the feeling that he was going to hate paper tests forevermore. Later that day. So, you gave a little child the final written test for the last year of the academy. The Hokage asked, slightly perturbed that such a hard test would be given to such a young kid. Ah, yes, sir. It was the best way to test him, in my opinion. And what did you find out? That I'll be spending the next 3 to 5 months teaching the kid how to read and write properly. His math is good, excellent in some areas even, he just doesn't know what to do to solve the problems. The aged Hokage mused over what to do with the orphanage people, and their many failures. That would go to his mental to-do list. Anything else? He shows an astounding understanding about the cause and effect principle. He does. The Hokage said darkly. The Hokage could only imagine what had been done when he hadn't been watching, to cause him to have such understanding. Yep, the orphanage people definitely got knocked a few spots up on his to-do list. Yes, given a situation, he could think of several possibilities that even I couldn't, Hokage-sama. Even with his extremely limited knowledge. Like, what? Oh, this and that. The Chunin said. The Hokage inwardly groaned. The razor, Kumasora could be extremely tight-lipped about certain things. This interview, for nothing involving the guy could be said to be a report, was going to go on for a while. In a certain child's mind. The Kyuubi was sort of pissed at the Gaki, somewhat pissed at himself and the mostly pissed off at the seal. The seal couldn't really do anything to really get onto his nerves yet, considering it hasn't yet spoken to him, so it couldn't insult him, it couldn't get out of the paper yet, so it couldn't poke at him or something like that, it was just its existence. It might also have to deal with the face on the back of the seal's smile. It just wore a nice, I know something you don't and it's gonna wreck your future, smile. How Kyuubi knew it was that kind of smile, no one mortal knows. Well, yet, to make matters worse, the face on the seal was that of the guy who sealed him in here. Stupid seal, how would I love to turn you into confetti, and dance as your shreds float down. That would be lovely. Then I get to go and burn that stupid village to the ground. The Kyuubi ended that happy thought as it glared at the seal. A whisper echoed to him. His ears weren't just for decoration, you know, so he heard it. Love to see you try. The Kyuubi lunged at the cage, getting fried in the process. He now had a nice burnt fur smell going on strong, and was covered in some soot. Okay, screw his anger at having a stupid container, his own anger at still being behind bars. His main anger was now directed at the stupid seal that had ruined his fur. Didn't the seal not realize how hard it was to get his fur in that way? He vocalized it thus. You motherfucking seal. I fucking want out. Let me out, damn it. Kyuubi then went on a rant that would make Tayuya proud. Sound Village. A child that looked to be in the age range of 8 to 11 named Tayuya was in a training match with her future members of the Sound 4-5. She sneezed. That small opening allowed her to lose that spar. Therefore she yelled, you fucking shithole spider. Don't you dare snicker. You too fat ass. Either. You twined motherfucker. Don't either of you think about it. You, over there, don't you dare act haughty, you damn walking skeleton. I've had enough of your superior than thou shit.
The guy who was watching the young people spar sighed. There was not enough soap in the world to wash her mouth out with.
With Naruto, he had figured out that he had a never before seen burning, passionate hatred of paper tests. It matched the level of hatred that was specifically held for a select few things people. That would be people who didn't like ramen, people who lied to him, people who hurt others for no good reason, and people who burned the food of the gods, aka ramen. Or that's what he called it. He didn't know that if he could speak to the Kyuubi would say that he loved ramen as well, since it was food of the gods, and he would know since he'd been to a couple of the goddess parties, who despite being gods couldn't cook to save themselves, they'd just manifest it when he was in humanoid form, or if Sarutobi would ever tell him who his parents were and he were to ask what his parents' favorite food was, he would reply, ramen.
In the meantime, he was finishing his wall. It's pretty hard to believe that he, Naruto, could paint this mural, from memory of a picture he'd once seen in a newspaper. If he had to go to class every day, he could finish it in about 3 weeks or so. 3 weeks or so to finish the mural of the village. It had to have been the best mural of the Konoha in existence, that he knew of.
Once he'd finished it, he wouldn't hide anymore. He'd show them all. But for now, it was getting late. The sun had just set, for Kami's sake.
A secluded part of the god's realm. Okay. I bet these guys' souls. A goddess said, her voice ringing hollow.
Then I raise you, these poor souls, may your friends and family weep at your passing. Another goddess said, her voice causing a flicker of sadness to appear on the other gathered goddess faces.
I fold, said a third goddess. Her voice caused everyone nearby to want to jump in happiness.
I'm going to raise these then. The first goddess blinked at the goddess who had just said that. She was in the top 5 contenders of most powerful goddess, who strangely enough, wasn't worshipped. Then again, this was the non-worshipped goddess game. As in no specific temples or rituals were dedicated to them. Well, maybe the last one, but that was all on the part of the individual. The game was held every Saturday night.
Lady Luck, worried about a bet? The first said, in a bored hollow tone. It is possible that on rare occasions I lose, Shinigami-san. Well, it did happen a really long time ago. She lost a bet with a mortal. Yep. The mortal then won luck for him and anyone in his line, as long as they didn't become professional gamblers. Then they would lose. The third goddess who spoke said, with undue happiness. Well, I didn't know that, said the second goddess. Her entire figure, although beautiful, spoke of misery untold. A fifth goddess drifted into the room. As she was one of the top goddesses, she was greeted with respect. Hey, Shin-chan, do you have any idea what happened to my cute-tailed vassal? She asked. Actually I do. I'll tell you once we're out of earshot.
As they quickly materialized to Limbo where the Shinigami and her employees lived, as in they did the work so she didn't have to. A big thank you to the person who came up with demon contracts, which bounded the poor person demon thing who signed such a contract, for a century and a millennia or so. Depending on the contract.
If it was under 5 centuries, then the person was called a summer Shinigami. Seeing as how the Shinigami absolved all crimes when you signed up, there was quite a lot of summer Shinigami. Whatever crimes you were convicted of when you went first to get the job was prevented by the fact that the contract was made by using the primal powers. As in, you violated the contract, i.e. not reaching your requisite quota, lazing on the job, committing the crimes that made you come to the Shinigami in the first place, etc. You were obliterated. Soul, body, possibly even your very atoms. The Shinigami base was in Limbo. Mostly because Limbo connected to ALL realms, planes, and dimensions of existence.
However, Limbo is called Limbo for a reason. It is fucking crazy central.
You have to be crazy or dead or desperate or have a god's or really high-ranking demon's favor to survive for more than an hour in there.
Honestly, if it can rain tulips up from a pink cloud that has a chocolate Easter bunny driving it, along with a bunch of neon green marshmallow puffs and hot chocolate on the cloud bus. Any more description would make you lose your mind. So I'm not going to tell you about the talking, fighting, chicken, that has a sword and could use it, or the polka-dotted vines that ate the pillow bush. As in there were pillows growing off the bush.
So, Shinigami-chan, what happened to my plushy fox? The one goddess asked. Good news or bad news or so-so news first? Let's work our way up. Okay. Bad news first. The Kyuubi's been sealed inside a cute, for a mortal little blonde kid, who if the kid dies, so does your fuzzy. The so-so news is that the kid is not defenseless. I've got a Reaper on standby to kill any major threats. Also belonging in the so-so news category is the fact that the Kyuubi tampered a little with the seal, and according to a couple of my Reapers, is where another piece of so-so news is. The seal had a nice backup plan. The mortal that designed it was a genius in a class of his own. He managed to escape most of the precautions we gods took after that happened. Since Kyuubi tampered with the original plan, it went to the secondary plan. She explained the seal's secondary measure. So the good news about my fuzzy is, it's sort of good news. It's kind of hard to explain. Then give me a metaphor then. Lady Death gave a metaphor that explained it well. After getting a few questions answered, the liege lady of the Kyuubi asked, so what would happen if the kid did die? That would be kind of hard considering the Kyuubi's and the seal's survival instincts. You'd be lucky to hurt him majorly enough to draw blood once they're able to manifest, with some work on both sides, which would be in a decade or so. Maybe 2 decades. Well, the Kyuubi will be able to. The seal would take maybe a few years later. In the meantime, he's just fixing all the injuries that he sustains. Oh, wait, what is the mortal doing that causes himself harm? Not him. Other idiots that have the intelligence and capacity of small, know that's an insult to rodents, so I won't say that. I did give a special appearance, which should have scared some sense into them, but no, they had to have a nice genocide of higher thinking individuals. Death of the mind is not a pretty thing. Death of the mind? The goddess asked. Never mind. Morgue humor. If you have any questions, ask my brother who deals with the day-to-day running of death and rebirth in the underworld. The guy who speaks, like this. She asked, doing a fair impression of him, and he has those mismatched eyes too. Yep. He's much better at multitasking and such. Also tell him not to touch my umbrella stand, if you do.
You have an umbrella stand. Such a useless piece of furniture. Wait, she had furniture, so that meant she had a house. Death's house. She, as a goddess, could tell it would be said that way would be interesting. I like my umbrella stand. It holds my scythe and my other weapons, like my sword.
I only use my sword if I don't feel like using my scythe.
Which is pretty rare, considering I rarely have to do my job at all.
Only on the big jobs now, like stars, planets, solar systems, and whatever massacres I feel like attending to. Star steel is such a handy material. The Lady of Death smiled, joyfully. She then changed her clothes into her official Shinigami uniform. She had a mask, pushed to the side, that looked to be a demon's face contorting in agony, and loose clothes, and a few weapons she manifested. Her soft features became wax-like and she grew a bit more corpse-like, and her nails became longer by a few inches, while her hair went to uneven lengths. Delegating is such a beautiful thing. She moved some of her hair behind her ear. Like, I dunno, a skull named Bram Stoker. You have to admit it's a cute skull. She pointed to the skull nailed in the tree that had walked up. As in had human legs and was wearing running shoes. I like the fake fangs. She said. I do too. However, the vamps didn't like him. Something about ruining their image for Hollywood a long time before Hollywood was made, and fell. What did the guy do? Wrote a book. It shows you that you should always write smut, if anything at all. With that, the goddess of death pulled out a bright orange book. It made a strange picture altogether. The goddess of death, reading a romance novel, if it could be called a romance, while having her tools of the job on her person, and in her uniform. You read that? She asked. Why not? Don't you already know what is in there?
Yep. I just like it. The Kyuubi's liege lady manifested herself elsewhere. She then joined the other goddess poker game despite the fact that she had holidays dedicated to her. It became a Saturday night ritual, which sucked for the people who died on Monday, since that would tell you who won the game, if one did a little legwork and research.
Wherever Jiraiya is. Jiraiya just felt a strong shudder creep across his back. Like someone was doing river dance on his grave. He then shook off the feeling, and went back to his research. With this next book, even the gods would love it. He just didn't know how much they loved it. It had been about 6 or so years since Naruto had started the academy. He had a small problem with the first year since his reading and writing skills weren't up to par with the rest of them. He also had a few problems in the first year's physical conditioning, since the other students were older than him, and thus bigger. So he worked at the physical stuff, early in the day. Way earlier than most people wanted to contemplate getting up at. Unless you were pretty much insane. That's where he came up with the idea of failing the Genin exam for the first time. After all, while there were kids who had graduated early, most were given grudging respect by others, but they had no true bonds. That Naruto learned from Itachi, when he had stopped by at his apartment at odd times. They made the perfect shinobi, but when you've been schooled your whole life in deception, and to not let your emotions get in the way of anything, it is hard to forget all that conditioning and make friends or even acquaintances.
So while he passed, he did the bare minimum to get to the Genin exam the first time. Then he failed the test. The sad thing was he didn't even try. His Bushin was just that pathetic. Then again, it may have been the prank that he'd pulled on the teacher the day before the exam that morning, which made the teacher adjust his test scores.
Of course he was 10 or so by that time, so he enjoyed the next class he was in. He loved that bit of illegal paper shuffling. He managed to get in a decent class, with somewhat decent to him, teachers. After all, the academy graduated a class every 3 or 4 months or so. How else would you get the ninja force that Konoha has if you only pass a third or so of every graduating class as genin? Of course, that was a rumor that had been going on for a while. That class had a few interesting people in it, just not very many. Only a couple of them had the real stuff that made a ninja. Having known some very awesome ninja, he knew what they needed, but that was up for debate about how much someone could change.
Speaking of debates, he and a guy in that class had very many and interesting ones. It left a couple of other students in the class amazed when one or two specific arguments disrupted class. Most of the others in the class just got headaches. As the Shinigami said in the last chapter, death of the mind is a horrible thing.
The day before he failed that genin exam, this time on purpose, because he now had the chakra control it took, thanks to his debate partner, to properly make a bushin. Of course, him telling his debate partner that made a minor debate in and of itself, but when challenged, he ended it with, "I'm still 10, if I graduate with the next class, that has any potential past Chunin, later on, I'll still be the youngest in the class that has anyone that would make it in the ninja world." The class that he was joining today, thanks to a nice illegal paper shuffle he'd pulled, supposedly had a lot of talent. It was filled with clan heirs, or people in line to be heirs. He used the word, supposedly, because he knew from observation, that most rookies of the year were over-arrogant, along with any people with a clan. Those who didn't have clans often mulled and said they sucked because of it. Going from the files that he looked at, thank you Itachi for teaching him how to be and E, like an A and BU, for a birthday present, his 6th birthday mind you, and going over those files, he had a good idea of who would be good, who would be excellent, and who could be if they ever went at it. Presently, after a couple of days of observation of the class from atop the school roof, and hearing them do whatever they deemed worth doing, he decided that they could be excellent ninjas, but lacked motivation. Oh, he'd shake up the class for sure. That led to now. Iruka was trying to quiet the class, which was easier said than done. Went and did the jutsu that he was quite famous for in the academy circles. That done, the class had now shut up. Mizuki, his teaching assistant, wrote down who would get detention, or who would go first in whatever. This was allowed because the real world was much worse than whatever the academy could throw at them. Iruka cleared his throat. Now settle down, and listen up. Today we have a new student. He has failed the genin exam but still wishes to try to prove he could be a viable ninja. That kind of determination is to be applauded. That kind of determination is what separates the good ninjas I hope you all will eventually be from the excellent ninjas that some of you will be. Now then, I'll introduce to you. Who cares? He has to be a loser to fail the genin exam like that, Kiba said. That comment was what made Naruto decide to prank him hard. He had heard the brash boy's voice many a times during his few days' observation. He knew that voice. Thus he did a simple henge, and opened the door. To say Kiba was flabbergasted when Hana opened the door was an understatement. She had already made Chunin, so what was she doing here? "Sis. What are you doing here?" he shouted. "Nothing much, just that Mom may want to have words with you about your recent report." She then muttered something about cleaning all the kennels by yourself, and then unleashing the dogs of war on your butt. Not to mention all the doghouse and neutering threats she threw in. "What?" Kiba sputtered. She can't be serious, is she? That's so not fair, sis, you have to help me out." After that, Hana vanished laughing in a puff of smoke, revealing a blond boy. He was wearing a white shirt with brown pants and a civilian-style brown vest. He was also wearing, strangely enough, headphones. Not that you could readily tell, his hair spiky as it was hid most of the headphones, and the rest of his blonde hair was tied into a short, fluffy ponytail. Well, what could reach in and decided to stay in the ponytail? I can't believe he fell for that, couldn't you smell the difference? Well, Kiba was now the spotlight of attention. Time to look cool. I know that, it's just that you did that, and I just went along to make you lift your disguise. I think your dog says something different, Kiba. Shino coldly pointed out, a row behind Kiba and some seats to the right, putting the spotlight on the dog for the moment. Akamaru was currently begging for pettings and receiving them. Akamaru. You traitor. Akamaru then barked something back at Kiba. You really smell Hana on him? Kiba asked. Getting an affirmative, he then went back to brash Kiba. Okay, Blondie. Where did you meet my sister? Well, when you do a class transfer or other paperwork involving this place, you turn it into the office. I ran into her while I think it was anyway, Mom was with the principal. With this information, Kiba's eyes widened and he dashed out of the room. A few stunned moments later, Naruto went and said, rather embarrassed, I didn't think he'd fall for that one too. Someone in the class asked which one. The nice lie involving Kiba's mom and sister. I actually ran into her in the market this morning. Of course the rest of the class didn't hear the last part, they were too busy laughing. Naruto, Mizuki warned, you're getting detention for disrupting class and pranking a fellow classmate. Sorry sensei. Naruto said, not sorry in the slightest, but I really didn't think he'd fall for that last one. He said unabashed, then he continued, so where should I sit? Just find any old seat, Naruto, but first introduce yourself, Iruka said. Sure. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, and it's nice to meet you all. Iruka went and reviewed his actions against the guy. At the moment though, Iruka wanted to test him. He had heard from a couple of instructors that he could have passed last year, just decided not to. The reason was said to be if he did graduate this year, in this class, he'd still be the youngest. Tomorrow would be interesting as people would tell their parents what went on, and who was now in their class. With a prank like that one, which got Iruka certified from his inner prankster, they'd be sure to talk it up. Then depending on the parents a couple of things would happen. Especially the ones with civilian parents, they held trust with the Yondaimi's seal, but not as much as the ninja community did. Then again, they were civilians. They didn't know what was fully possible in the ninja world. No one fully did. This in and of itself would be interesting. Okay, when Kiba gets back, we'll go outside and do target practice. After that, we'll go and practice our taijutsu. Mizuki, who was having darker thoughts than his fellow teacher, then thought, now time to humiliate the Kyuubi kid. About an hour and a half later, Mizuki's plan had sort of backfired. He had given the kid deficient kunai, and after the brat had looked over the kunai, he had managed to get on target about 85% of the time. When they had sparred, he found out that Naruto had adapted the academy taijutsu into a rough, yet elegant, taijutsu style. Most noted about it was the fact that it was pretty hard to grab hold of him, hit him, or block him, because the style favored a hard debilitating hit followed by several rapid softer hits, in the same area. However, he had managed to call Naruto on several blows, earning him another sparring session later, in which Mizuki would be able to beat the crap out of him in. Now they had a half-hour-long break for lunch and then they would be back to class work.
With Naruto. Naruto was not having a nice day. First off, he'd been given detention for pranking Kiba, it was really good one too. They could have used it as an example of how the Henge no Jutsu could be used to infiltrate places. But when he explained it to Mizuki, he was given detention. Hell, the mutt should always check who the person was. Not his fault the dog boy was an idiot. The dog at least knew duplicity. He wouldn't be surprised if the ownership thing was the other way around. The dog owning the human.
Second, there was Mizuki. The guy just rubbed him wrong. He tried to humiliate him in target practice by giving him crap kunai, which thanks to one of his old classmates he could throw just about anything throwable and some things not really considered throwable, with passing accuracy. Next, Mizuki, again, tried to decimate him in taijutsu. Honestly, if he didn't have a bruise on his arm from where he hit him, he didn't love ramen. Not that the bruise was gonna stay there long. He was going to pass on the whole sparring session later. It was doubtful they'd spar. It was more like the Chunin, with the possibilities of some buddies or people with a common cause would try to beat down on him. His whole style was based on a strong strike, and several weaker strikes in the same area, eventually strengthening those weak strikes until it made his opponent useless. Needless to say, It was sort of a rapid, graceful brawling style. Now he was getting pissed on by deviating from the academy taijutsu. Whatever, that didn't really bother him too much. What would bother him was the fact that Mizuki would undoubtedly mess with his grades in class. Not that, it was much different from what some other teachers did. However, they quickly learned that if they were too damn obvious, they would pay for it. The price was all sense of dignity and pride. On some occasions it was integrity, honor, and one person's self-worth. That was fun in a sick sort of way. Oh, well. Mizuki, you silver-haired bastard, you're going to get it. I will make your life hell. Starting in a week or so, I need to swipe another camera first. Surveillance and survey, here we come. Classroom. Iruka was busy teaching. Naruto was doodling in his notebook. Mizuki, seeing Naruto not paying attention, gave a subtle signal to Iruka. Iruka paused, and asked, "Now Naruto, can you repeat what I just said?" Naruto did, paraphrasing on some of it. Iruka watched as Naruto's paraphrased lecture allowed some of the others to grasp the concept.
Of course, some other students already knew all about it, and thus tuned it out, dismissing him as a show-off. Iruka nodded. The kid was pretty smart. How smart? Who knew? It was pretty common occurrence for some of Naruto's previous teachers to mess with his grades. He then went and assigned homework about the weather, and how it could affect the mission. Then, Iruka went and gave a pop quiz. The class predictably groaned. As he had Mizuki pass out the papers, he watched Naruto. Naruto had groaned as the paper was handed out to him. However, he did as the rest of them did, and went to work on his paper. The quiz was 30 short essay questions, with 10 definition questions on different areas on ninja life and one situation question, followed by a couple of math questions. The Academy's reputation was well earned. Naruto worked through at a moderately quick pace, answering all. He saved the situation question for last, as in after he'd finished a small cat doodle on the back of the second page in the upper corner. He finished the question just as Iruka called time, and dismissed them all, unless they had detention or something. Naruto walked up front sullenly and asked what did he have to do for detention. Okay, Naruto, I need 100 write-offs on the blackboard saying, I will not prank or disturb my classmates, and the learning environment that the academy provides for all. Now, remember 100 times. Naruto glumly got to work on his write-offs, not believing that gutter shit for 100,000 Ryu. As he worked 2 lines at a time, holding the chalk pieces a certain way. At a little past halfway, the second piece of chalk broke, ending his 2-a-time approach. Or at least that way. Now, he just held one in each hand, and did 2 lines at a time. This way was a bit harder to do than the 2 pieces in one hand approach, mostly because it still had to be legible, and look alike. The coordination required was a bitch and a half. He'd mastered the technique though. All in all, he managed to do all his write-offs in half the time. So, using the extra time, he went and left a quick half-minute doodle and a message on the other board. He then raced out, saying he was done. A few seconds later, after Naruto was in the clear, a cry rang out, Naruto. Iruka erased the picture and message on the blackboard, wondering what Naruto meant by, never trust a thing I say. Unless it has the grace of a feline. So why did he draw a picture of Akamaru holding a leash on Kiba, who was pissing like a dog on a conveniently placed fire hydrant? Naruto's apartment. Naruto had raced back to his apartment building, locking the front door behind him. When he had want or need to, the place could be a small fortress. The door had several locks on it, like normal people's, but then his door wasn't made to keep out normal. His door had several dead bolts, scattered around the frame and beyond. This way, if anyone had the bright idea to get at the hinges, not that they readily could, and the door was unhinged, they'd still have to remove the door. The only way that would happen was if they splintered it or jutsued it. His apartment, in fact the whole building, was empty. Why? Well, originally the owner died, and left no heirs to it, and then when the orphanage kicked him out, he was placed in here. A pretty old property law said that if a person lived for 5 years on an unclaimed lot, it was theirs. Having his and Itachi's lawyer buddy do a little illegal paper shuffle, it was marked unclaimed. That was about 6 years ago. So for the past year or so, as the owner, he'd slowly been renovating the place. He really couldn't do much, since he couldn't get all the permits, not that he as the owner need them now or help or the supplies for the most part. But now the place had the walls fixed, and painted. He also had a nice security system set up to his apartment. His little sublet, that he spent most of his time in was on the top floor. In the corner next to the fire escape. But, back to the security system that he'd designed thanks to the nice book on sealing he had stolen from the Hokage, his security was top notch. There was his nice, stay out, area effect, starting and reaching out maybe 10 feet or so from his building, popping up occasionally, on timers in other spots of the building as well. Giving a certain foreboding, and haunting air. The next feature was the lockdown. Which would quarantine whoever in a certain area. His favorite measure, however, was not the key Rikojinicition programmed on the door, but the genjutsu seals that he made. He sucked at regular genjutsu, but that was because his control still sucked. Seals controlled the amount that was regulated in the genjutsu, along with other seals which would absorb chakra that would be released when genjutsu was dispelled. It would then go to a different genjutsu. It had about 70 options or so to choose from. Those options ran based on the information the scan seals on the doors, windows, and some walls provided. As Itachi had once commented, after a test run, I'd be surprised if you couldn't stop an army of Anbu level ninja, led by a cage in here. He had responded, I was aiming for a mob, but army will work. Now then, all he had to do was wait for tomorrow. That would decide if any of his classmates were worth his effort to pass. Why, you might ask? Naruto gave an extremely disturbing Cheshire cat grin. With de Fuzzy. The Kyuubi really hated the seal. As in the level of hatred that was reserved for the blondie who stuck him in here in the first place. Of course he and the seal, who looked picture perfect for the blonde, had exchanged many insults since the seal had become active. Well, active enough to exchange insults. Stupid piece of paper, he muttered. Baka fox. The seal responded. Ignoring you, damnable seal. I'll have confetti rain down yet. Yeah, right. The seal shot back at him, laughing all the while. You underestimate the seal's creator's genius. You're talking in third person. That's weird on guys. On girls it's cute. Guys it's just weird. Ignoring you. The seal growled out several oaths. Kyuubi successfully ignored him, integrating himself in the blonde's senses. The little guy's life had gotten complicated as he had grown up, integrating himself in both human society and the supernatural society. He wondered if the little guy could successfully lead the double life with the ninjas unaware of his non-human friends. Naruto's apartment roof. He was watching the clouds on top of the roof. It was a nice relaxing hobby of his. In fact, most of his hobbies were. Well, when they weren't giving him problems like a couple of side projects he had going on. At the moment he wished that Itachi was here. After the wholesale slaughter of the Uchiha clan, he could understand. He was busy. Still didn't stop him from missing him though. Hell, Itachi had gotten in the habit of hanging out with him at times, despite the age, skill, and status difference. The two talked like two old men that had been through a war together. Often philosophizing and bringing up some memories. Example, the geisha he'd painted on the police building using the Uchiha crest as a fan. Or problems that they had going on. Naruto was probably the only guy in Konoha who knew the real truth of what went on that night. Itachi had fixed some of his problems, like the outrageously super good hearing that caused him many a headaches. Solution was the earphones he got for his 5th birthday as a late birthday present. He still wore them, mostly hidden by his hair. His sense of smell was a different thing. He just ignored most of the smells. His eyes adjusted really fast when exposed to light after total darkness. Hell, he could see perfectly in the dark. The first week after dealing with the orphanage bullies, and his new headphones before getting kicked out in the street, Itachi had helped him seal his closet-sized room up. As in, all his belongings were taken out, and transported to his new apartment that the Chunin lawyer had set up for him. He found out about the illegal paper shuffle later. When Kumasora, the ninja lawyer and his somewhat personal tutor, had presented him the deed to the place. The door and windows of his closet bedroom at the orphanage were then locked with the Uchiha's special seal that kept outside elements from influencing the scene. Effectively, making it so that only an Uchiha, a really trusted friend of that clan, could get in. Since that night, the number of people who could get in and out dropped from almost 300 or so to under 20. Which was pretty alright, seeing how the Kyuubi had killed about 2/5 of his clan before they were all killed. Talk about a bad break. Itachi had also got some of the locks that Naruto now had on his doors. After seeing how Naruto was usually treated. Hell, after Itachi had become Anbu, he'd probably saved his tail several times. He decided to stop reminiscing about the past, and do something about it. After all, he might be young, but his soul was an old, kind, caring one. So to fill his head with a buzz of music as he turned on a small machine that he'd found in the Hokage's tower's basement. After turning the machine on, as low as it could play. Thank you for whoever made what was called an MP3. The only problem was the life of the charge it had. The little cylinder he had figured out had to do with electricity, thanks to the fact that electricity was made out of positive and negative ions flowing along a wire, which gave him the idea of the charge cell. So he'd gone through the basics of elemental chakra training with the elements, and after quite a bit of work, that was a lot more trouble than it would probably ever be worth, had managed to turn his chakra into lightning chakra, using chakra to create a more potent form of itself, and channeled it into the little cylinder. Snapping the little power cell into it and randomly pressing buttons, he had music. The MP3 had made itself into a nice present for his 9th birthday when he had decided to hide in the tower's basement for the week. To say that he learned to keep caches around the village was an understatement. He probably had enough equipment stashed to make a platoon or two of ninja envious. What was more was the fact that only a few people could ever find them. First off, they'd have to accomplish in the sealing arts. Next, they'd have to be the absolute best in genjutsu, since that was what his stashes were firstly and finally hidden behind. Then third, you had to not get killed by the traps that protected the cache. Of course, if you had one of Naruto's master, or his skeleton keys, you didn't have to worry about those problems. In fact, they'd even help you find them by twitching subtly. Like his own personal twitch. It still pulled some of his back muscles when it happened. Like a super quick Charlie horse. It hurt like hell, but not much more than when you had a sprained ankle and walked on it, and it sorted itself out a while later. It just happened really quick. He blithely wondered if the Kyuubi had been trying to get out or what. He knew his seal had mutated somewhat over time. After all, he did have a photographic memory when he chose to use it. What the mutations were doing he really had a really basic idea of. That was probably wrong. If he was right, then by the time this year or the next was up, he could probably, freely, or in times of emotional distress, access a bit of the fox's chakra. He didn't know how much, but it probably wasn't a full tale. Hell, he might even be able to talk to the damn thing. Eventually he might fully absorb the fuzzy bastard as he was originally supposed to. The talking thing had some problems to it. If he didn't establish that he was on top, the Kyuubi could torment him, weaken his defenses and take over. Or drive him insane. Or tutor him in the demonic arts that only a demon lord knew, which brought a smile to his whiskered face. Maybe more along the lines of ultra-secret, village scope of destruction techniques. Hell, Kai had taught him how to breathe water, and how to fake drowning. That had surprisingly come in handy. Several times. Once, when a few people had left him for dead out in a forest, he'd met the dryads, or the tree nymphs. Apparently, they had been in the feudal type style, vassals of the Kyuubi. Since he held Kyuubi, that meant he was above the Kyuubi, well, for the moment. So in effect he ruled them. Well, as much as any male could ever rule the matriarchal dryads. They had taught him how to be in tune with the earth. However, no mortal ever truly could, since the mortals required more heartbeats than once every 20 years. In effect, in that week he'd spent with them, he had got more attuned to the earth, its reservoirs, and thus the plants. He was told that he was the first male person, in almost a century, to meet and receive this training of this skill. The other person being the first Hokage, whose mother was apparently Dryad. Being a powerful Dryad, involved how in tune with the world you were, and your mom being a Dryad, even if she didn't know she was one. For some reason, the Dryad blood didn't carry well if you were male. The chances were like 1 in 16. Thus, even if your great-great-grandma was a Dryad, then her daughter was one too, even if she didn't get the training of one. As long as the maternal line continued, all the girls, women would be considered dryads. Any sons born to the women would carry the ability and be able to use it, but not able to pass it on. What was really surprising was the fact that you could have the barest hint of a drop of dryad blood in you, but be more powerful than full dryads. It all depended on how in tune you were. If you were really in tune with it, you could identify humans from non-humans and tell what they were, and as long as their feet touched the ground, even by proxy if you were really in tune with nature and track them. You could hide from sight with a glamour, but not from nature. That ability, and the fact that nature was everywhere made dryads a force to be reckoned with. What was really surprising was the fact of how many non-human races lived in Konoha seamlessly. Or he should be more specific, how many humans were either descended or are not human. The Nara and Yamanaka families were excellent examples, as were most clans with bloodlines or specific abilities, but they were of the more deadly, frightening kind. Apparently, the Nara family was descended from skin walkers. Those skin walkers could, by stepping into someone's or something's shadow, go and take possession of it. It then had access to all the possessed person's or animal's memories. The shadow thing apparently copied and took the possessed thing's intelligence. Needless to say, the skin walkers were a pain to catch, kill, seeing as how they could outwit you effortlessly. Other abilities that the Nara clan of old had access to was to make something their territory, their slave, by stepping on the thing's shadows, or in present time, making the shadow stretch and reach the other person's shadow. Apparently the shadow stealing the intelligence thing still worked if unconsciously. There were a couple of other abilities the skin walkers had, but were a bit too disturbing to think about. Really, to make your own shadow fight you, and eventually kill you, was one twisted, but awesome ability. On to the Yamanaka's bit of the example. The now version of how they were. They could go in someone's mind, erase it, or find out information. All of that closely monitored by machines, for both the mind walker and the poor guy getting his brain picked apart. The old version could do that at the range of miles. They could place compulsions, and after messing around in your mind some, and getting used to your individual thought process, they could find you anywhere. Even the dryads couldn't do that. There was a limit to how in tune with nature you could get before health complications arose. However, they had a nice information system that they called the grapevine. With that, they could coordinate well. The old Yamanakas could do the same thing, just faster and with allies, or people they had compelled, yanking out their free will, and leaving them as shells of the former people. They had all the skills of the person they used to be, but they were unless they were told to act like they were before by burying the compulsion. Basically, they could, from the safe distance of a couple miles away, arrange a person on the inside of a sieged castle to open the gate. And allow the slaughter of the defenders to happen, especially if they were compelled to not kill the invaders. The now Yamanakas could do the same thing, but their range was extremely limited to how far away you could spy your enemy. They were commonly known as the Iscariot Magnus Valentia, or the mages betraying love magics. That name arose through a really long story that took about a week for Kai to tell fully. Apparently, if the old Yamanakas were strong enough, they could get you to do anything, even kill your lover, hence the name. They were as a whole bossy, brash, on top of things, or thought they were on top, and went with the people who offered the best chance of survival. It was how mages' politics worked. It's how most non-human politics worked. You threw your lot in with the person who wasn't going to kill you. And then you plan to kill the person who just didn't kill you, unless you owe the person majorly. Basically, he would have some problems when he had decent access to the Kyuubi's powers, providing he wasn't insane by that time. The age-old primal instincts of the clans would click in. It's why he and Itachi clicked. Itachi was a throwback to where the instincts of what he was descended from were much more prominent. Night Stalkers, or more commonly known as the he can't pronounce the word to remember it off the top of his head, mids or something like that, or the whatever the hell you called them, were powerful, and Itachi was a much closer match to them than the rest of his clan. However, their power paled when compared to Kyuubi. It was like comparing cheap yellow gold paint to the real thing. Basically, the few civilians who he smiled to at all, when he just wasn't plain happy, was because they didn't want to get on the Kyuubi kid's bad side when he came into his, well, almost birthright. He had had it for most of his life after all. They treated him like a regular kid. They had liked the fourth apparently, and obeyed his old man's last wishes. It was almost impossible to keep secrets among the supernatural society. Too bad they didn't know where his mother was or if she was alive, or what happened to her corpse if she did die in the Kyuubi attack, even if they weren't carried out by the human population. However, he did have an uncle which surprised him, even if his uncle thought that his older sister had died long before she even came to Konoha. He'd ask the old man Hokage later, like when he made Chunin later, why he had kept such secrets from him. Hell, he'd looked up the Hokage's laws himself once, and after mulling over it a few days he had figured out the purpose of the laws. It wasn't the best job of cover-ups he had ever seen, but it worked in a panicked sort of patch way. However, that wasn't the only reason that the supernatural were nice to him. The suck-ups. So much for hoping to have a normal life. His stomach growled. He'd go to that ramen stand that was a front for a non-human sanctuary. He didn't care that it was a front for that sort of stuff, but the thing he really liked about it was the fact that violence was prohibited by the laws, rules, traditions of sanctuary. How that happened was thanks to a something he couldn't pronounce, also known as a god killer, high judge, broker, and several other titles, thanks to his interventions, who drew power from the primal source of the universe, pure unadulterated chaos. When those rules were violated, bad things happened. The clan wars, that had ended with the establishment of the hidden villages, and the first two great ninja wars were started over stuff like that. Hunters, or wet boys, had got their fees, or debtors, but were sloppy about it. Thus the shit hit the fan, and everyone got sucked in. His life, as someone not even a genin yet, was already complicated, and bound to be more complicated as his ninja rank and responsibility increased, as well as his active role in the politics of the underworld, or the supernatural society while he aged, or not aged depending on his tenant. Hell, he was already short for his age group. Fuck, he hadn't even added in the fact that according to the dryads, he was either a threat to a goddess the Kyuubi was a temporary vassal for, or the fact that the goddess might make him her vassal. Which could eventually lead to her getting pissed at him for some imagined slight and him getting fucked up for good. As he mentally cursed, he made his way to the ramen stand. Trying not to dwell of that fact, or any other facts of his screwed up life. Hell, as most non-humans knew that balancing a human life and a supernatural life was like oil and water. Impossible. There are many reasons for this, but for the main thing that tended to screw up many was the fact that their base forms weren't human. His was, and he intended to show the world, hidden or not, that the balancing act wasn't impossible. Of course, the longest runs were about 20 to 30 years, and on rare occasion to 40 years of deception. He planned to do his balancing act just so, until he was ready. When was that? How in the hells would he know? He didn't know, but in the meantime he was eating. Then he would sit on Yondi's stone head, and contemplate his life, and the pranks he would pull, and how best to exact revenge on Mizuki. One thing was for certain, whatever he did to Mizuki, couldn't be pinned on him, and that would take a bit of planning. So, thinking vengeful thoughts, he went and got the food of the gods. He had 8 bowls of ramen. He was hungry. The father and daughter pair of shapeshifters smiled. He was their best customer after all. A rather broody boy walked home, to his mostly empty house. Mostly empty because the ghosts of the past still haunted it. So now we watch one Sasuke Uchiha as he goes to the clan's private training ground. His thoughts were something like this: Uzumaki Naruto, huh? According to Itachi, that blonde kid was, what were the words that Itachi used? Ah. Uzumaki Naruto is an enigma, shaded by secrets, and shrouded in suspicions. I don't see anything that would classify as any of that tripe. All I see is adobe. Then he remembered what their teacher was always preaching. Look underneath the underneath. So thinking that over, he thought first off, how does Itachi know him? On the surface you would never guess that the blonde idiot would know Itachi. So how does Itachi know Naruto well enough to make such a statement? With some more thought he decided that he lacked decent information, and thus he'd watch the blonde surreptitiously during class so that the guy wouldn't cut into his training time. In fact, he might hang out at the school's training grounds. If today was anything to go by, then the blonde would have detention almost every day. Now, then how to get rid of the stalkers that would follow me around like I'm an open flame and they're moths. A future legendary lays, and a future gourmet walked home. They were talking of the day's events. Specifically of the new kid, and not his prank. So, Shika, what do you think of the new kid? Choji asked his slightly older friend. Shikamaru sighed. Troublesome kid. I think if today was any judge of the guy, he has way too many tricks and secrets up his sleeves. What makes you say that? He wasn't going to point out that he was wearing short sleeves. Hannah and her mom go to the markets on Wednesday. According to my mom anyway. Today is. It's Friday. So you see my point. No, they could have forgotten to get something or were busy on Wednesday. I think the kid is like a what would be a good example. Troublesome. But back to example, think of those crystals with the etchings inside of them. When you look at it from one side, it looks a certain image. Let's call this side determined. Another side shows a different version of the image. Let's call that one sneak, and another side prankster. The fourth side is called stupid. What I want to know is why does he have those different sides? But it's too troublesome to actively answer. I'll just watch him, the troublesome guy. Isn't that insulting? Calling him stupid in the metaphor. He did answer the question that Aruka threw at him. It's repetition. Sure, he paraphrased it, but my idea is that he doesn't like to do anything at all involving a pencil in his hand, unless it's drawing, 'cause I saw his notebook. There is his notes, with pictures surrounding and sometimes overlapping his notes. It's a good way to take notes on something you want to keep secret. I thought you were asleep through the whole quiz. You know my mom. She'd kill me, slowly if I didn't actually put something down. That's true, Shika, but you could probably ace the entire academy if you tried. That's another thing entirely. I wanna stay with my best friend. Him, if you noticed, despite failing, at least once, is about the same age as us. If you go by height, he might even be younger than you. Means he got into the academy early, which means he has got some nice skills even if he is hiding them. You and Ino can now crack on his age instead of mine, thank you very much. Said Choji, the youngest of the Ino Shika Cho trio. You're here. He, the troublesome guy he most definitely is not here. Besides, while I do make a few jokes on your age, Ino makes more of them than I do. Peanut butter cookies. Choji said, in their own special code, since their moms would strangle them if she heard them cussing. Peanut butter cookies translated into pissy bitch crazy. Don't feel like placing ruler. Ino sneezed. She hated a particular flower, because it always made her sneeze. Her thoughts were on the new kid. She wondered if she could get Sakura to go after that short loser so she could get Sasuke. Then her thoughts wandered to her ambition and true love, Sasuke. He must have been thinking of her. Her sneeze was not from the flowers. Don't feel like placing line. Shino and his bugs were having a discussion, well as much as they could. The bugs were humming with energy and warnings. Something was odd about the new kid. Uzumaki Naruto, what secrets do you have? What makes my bugs wary of you? He was an Ambarame. He would unravel Naruto's secrets, one step at a time. First off, he would get some background information from his dad, if his dad had any at all on him. Then he would ask Naruto himself why his bugs said he was strange. If the direct approach did not work, then he would dig around, until he got to the bottom of that mystery. If all else failed, well, he'd figure it out when he'd get there. Don't feel like placing thingy. Hinata was happy that her secret crush was now in her class. She'd get to tell Neji. After all, in a strange, Naruto sort of way, he had saved Neji from the fate of most branch members. Even if she didn't understand the stuff that Naruto had pulled when he had saved Neji. Whatever he had pulled allowed Neji to escape his fate. That was a strange day entirely. What was even stranger was the fact that every Saturday evening, her father, Neji, and sometimes other branch members or a few of the more tolerant Hyuga elders, or even Neji's team would sometimes join. There was him, her crush, and they would talk about the strangest things. Like what was the fate of everyone? The only thing they could agree on that particular subject was death and taxes. They debated philosophy more or less, and other topics that had came up, based on whoever posed a question to the group. It was weird but totally possible, because of him. Hence her prior statement of, in a strange Naruto sort of way. He had his own rulebook and never worried about social graces, well, a few of them he did, but that was it. He was clever, determined, and cute. He never let anything bother him, not even some degrading comment. Wait, did I just say see cute? A furious blush was on her cheeks as she walked home. Don't feel like placing ruler. Kiba was pissed off at the new kid. He had made him look like a complete and total idiot. Hell, even his puppy, Akamaru, had upstaged him. As he stomped back to the Inuzuka complex, he went into his sister's animal clinic. Determined to know where and when Naruto had met her. Hey, sis, do you know an Uzumaki Naruto? He asked, a little less loud than usual. Yep. So how'd you meet him? Hannah asked, as she fed some of the animals they had temporarily, whether they were recovering from surgery or their owners were out of town and wanting their animal well taken care of. He's in my class. As in today. Ah, she said, as if that explained something of great importance. Just so he failed. Again. Damn it. I really want him to make genin, so I can ask for AD rank, so he could help with the animals here. You have trouble with the animals. Shock couldn't even begin to cover Kiba's face's reaction. You ever try to give Kuromaru a shot? Hannah asked him. No, I'm not stupid. He scoffed. Well, when he's here all the animals pretty much listen to him. He also brings in a lot of injured strays, that some person has hurt, and he found. Really? And a lot of lost pets. With him we find more lost pets than a Hyuga could spot. Faye, Kiba scoffed, so what did he bring in here today? A parrot with a hurt wing, that swears every other squawk. In two dialects. Kiba blinked. Naruto certainly hadn't mentioned that. Well, he made me look like an idiot today. So I am gonna prank him back. How did he do that? Hannah asked with a cynical interest. So Kiba told his story, and then Hannah pestered him for more details. Which he gave reluctantly. When he had finished, Hannah sighed, that's gonna be the biggest prank war that the Academy has ever seen. I hope you know when to give up. No way I'll ever give up. I'll show him. Just be careful. He once made a teacher quit from there. His pranks were so continuous, large scale and public. Let's not forget public. Also, he probably has way more experience in that area, and is a lot more devious. He hasn't been pinned down yet for more than half, for most of his prank traps. In fact, there are rumors that he has gotten some Anbu members with his pranks. Well, that just makes it more interesting. I'll get him for sure. Don't feel like placing ruler. Sakura was telling her parents about what happened today at school before she started on her homework. As she told her who it was, her mom told her to stay away from him. It was like her mom did a complete 180, from happy-go-lucky and proud parent to foreboding statuette of her mom. Well, she'd stay away from him, 'cause her mom asked her to, and she'd tell Ino Pig too. Although, why they wouldn't tell her caused her some confusion, she just said he was a bad kid. Although pranking Kiba could be constructed as bad, and he might be considered a bad influence, her mom wouldn't tell her why he was bad. Just saying he was a bad kid. It caused her some small part of grief, as if even she thought about betraying him in such a small way. Betraying him, she thought to herself. Her inner self said, he's not Sasuke, he's just an idiot who failed his genin test. A loser. There is no way for you to betray him. To betray him you would have to know him. You don't know such a loser, and he's so not worth our time. Hell yeah. So forget him and go after Sasuke, 'cause he's so much more awesome than that moron. She agreed with her inner self, if only to reorient herself and shut her inner self up. She waved a quick greeting to her older sister as she went out to her job. Out why she worked was a question that Sakura had, for they were well off, but brushed that off, as an older sister proving herself thing since she'd failed the academy. She then went and plotted how to get Sasuke to date her. Like her mom said she should. Don't feel like placing line. Naruto, the subject of all the people's thoughts and discussions, was having a small sneezing fit, on top of old Yondi's head. Sure, He had wanted to make an impression, but if he was going to judge by the amount of sneezes, most of the class must be talking about him. Sneezing so much made him decide to not do very many flashy entrances like that in the future. Thus, he went and left the fourth stone head, acquired a camera through legal means for once, if you consider under a henge legal, for nice shots of Mizuki, when he was pranked. Like blackmail photos that you had arranged. Thus the week or so before Mizuki's life became hell. He would do worse to him than that teacher who he made quit. A few months later. I know that there is a way out of this. Your move. But any way you move, in 3 turns I'll check you. One kid on a side of a shogi board said. Oh, shit. The other kid said. There's a way out of this, I know there is. I doubt that. Face it, you just lost. Said a pudgy spectator. Oh, there it is. Said the second kid. He then moved a piece. The first kid made another move after a moment of deliberation. The second kid made another move after a few seconds of thinking it through. I think that makes check on you. Troublesome. The first kid said, now identified as a Nara. The Nara moved a piece, after a few moments worth of thought. The second kid moved a piece and captured the Nara's king. And mate. The Nara kid's jaw gaped open. Shika. The spectator asked. I lost. Remember the bet? The second kid asked. A huge grin plastered on his face. Troublesome. But I'll do it, Naruto. Good. Knew I could count on you. So why are you being so troublesome? Shikamaru asked. For those not fluent in Nara, it meant, so why are you continuing on in such a waste of time? You could be sleeping. Sleeping was considered holy to Nara. To wake one up was to get cage main and then strangled. Oh, he started it. The winner stated. I thought you did, said spectator. No, he opened his big mouth. That's what did it. Besides, I'm pretty sure it doesn't fall under animal cruelty since Akamaru owns him, Choji. Naruto said. Cruel dude, just cruel. Choji said. Maybe he'll stop so I can go on with what I had originally planned. I didn't plan this stupid prank war. I have a question about one of your pranks. Shikamaru said. Which one? The roof one. As in the whole roof for a section of the academy was gone. Ah, he said fondly, his body language portraying fondness. That was a bit of work. It was. But it was actually easier done than said, strangely enough. Remembering that day, he grinned. It rained that day, Shikamaru complained, sounding somewhat threatening since being really threatening was too troublesome. That's why I had an umbrella. What was the point of all that? Choji asked. You didn't see the take a shower note. It was kind of graffitied on that one wall. I want to know why some other people had umbrellas and some didn't. Shikamaru said. He had gotten soaked. It was a weekend job. The roof anyway. I visit Hinata's cousin, since he was an old classmate of mine, on Saturday. Afterwards he probably warned Hinata. She probably told Shino, or Shino knew ahead of time. Their clan complexes are pretty close together. Shino having to pass by Hinata's almost every day on the way here. He wouldn't mention that he'd gotten lost in the Abarame's compound more times than he could count when he shortcutted across their orchards. Hence why he had stopped shortcutting through there. And you didn't warn us. Choji said. I didn't see you guys to warn you. Naruto said. Otherwise I would have. Next time do. Shikamaru reminded him. Will do so. That's my word. I won't go back on it. Next wide-scale prank I pull, I'll warn you guys too. That's pretty much next week, isn't it? Yeah. If you could get Kiba to stop being so damn stubborn, I wouldn't pull so many on the entire class. Besides, I'm ahead by like 1,000 points or so. Points. You guys have a point system? Shikamaru asked. Yep. Scary thing is he and I agreed on it. We call it the pranking accords. For each big prank it's a scale of 100 to 200, depending on how many it affects. Half of the points being for originality, a quarter for timing, and the other quarter divided up for difficulty, and how big it actually is. Big being defined as affecting more than 10 people. Small pranks are set up the same way, only up to 20 points though. Small affecting less than 5 people. Medium pranks affect from 5 or so, to 10 people. They're based on the same criteria, but depending on how many they hit, is how many points you get. The minimum on medium is 40 points, while the max for medium pranks at 80. Nice. So how far ahead are you? Let's look. He then pulled out a little black memo book from inside his brown civilian-style vest. Let's see. He flipped through some of the pages covered in doodles and random stuff. Landing on the correct page, he trailed his finger down a column. Me, I have approximately 857 points in debate, due to other circumstances, i.e., outside the academy. But I still have approximately 2,537 points anyway. Kiba has 272 points in debate, and 1,296 regular points. Then you have the cost. That's a minus 300 even for me, and a minus 550 for him. He just sucks at stealth. So you're still kicking his butt, even with the penalties. That's what. Not counting the debate points. You're still 2,200 strong while he's like 750-ish. If you add in the debate points, then you've got like what 3,000, and he has about 1,000 even. About. Anyway, I plan on being truant again. I need to go get supplies for what I'll pull today. Times like this I miss the military police. Shikamaru and Choji frowned at that comment. The blonde boy had some messed up ideas of fun. If they had to guess, he enjoyed tormenting the military police when they were around, way too much. Should we sit anywhere special? Try to stay close to Hinata. That's the no-hit spot. We both agreed on that too. That was kind of weird too. I think he likes her. I just don't prank her because her family would like tap me on the forehead and like kill me. Also try to stay away from Sasuke. Most of mine have him in center. Naruto said, leaving out the fact that he and Sasuke were somewhat civil to each other, what with him slowly getting rid of his fangirls. Well, except for his most determined fanatics. With that, Naruto back-flipped off the picnic table they were playing on, and disappeared from view in obviously the schoolyard, leaving Choji and Shikamaru stranded when the bell rang. They stared at the spot for several spots. That's new. Kuji finally said. Troublesome. Shikamaru replied. To other Naras or people familiar with them it meant, teach me how to do that so I can escape, insert name of a troublesome woman. He then lazily picked up the shogi set, and the pair walked inside. Getting inside the classroom while Iruka called order to the room. With Naruto. Naruto was kinda busy. Why was he busy? Well, he had just remembered that he had some other business to attend to. So he used a quick dryad trick, to blend in with his surroundings. This was one hell of a genjutsu, if it could even be classified as that. It was a hybrid of ninjutsu and genjutsu. With this he was untrackable. He could stay still in a heavily guarded manse, watch as it was searched, and remained unfound. As long as they didn't run into him or step on him or hear him. Since his ears were so sensitive, he managed to walk so quietly that even most ninjas couldn't detect him outside of instinct which warned them that he was a predator. He had recently, as in the past few months, perfected this trick without hand seals, or focus motions, as the dryads had called them, since the only hand signs they practiced was for their secondary language, which was for the dryads to in tune with nature, and thus even their voice can be used as a way to control nature, as he had to, so he could remain uncaught. All in all, it was good practice. He hadn't tested the technique on a Hyuga's Byakugan, or the Uchiha's Sharingan, but the last one was in rather short supply. The other option was kind of hard, because if it failed, he'd be brought into the Hokage and then he'd be in a mess of trouble. At the moment, he had to visit someone. Weapons Walk. Konoha's Weapons Walk. One of the most famous streets in existence in Konoha. Also, if you were a weapon shop owner, it would be your dream to own a store on Weapons Walk. However, we are not here to talk about the history of half the smithies and shops that decorate the wide street. We are currently a street over from the Weapons Walk. Custom Shop. The sign on the custom shop read, Custom Weapons and Jewelry. Get it customized. Satisfaction guaranteed. Detail and repair shop. What that all meant was the fact that, if you wanted something customized or repaired, or it was a one-of-a-kind specialty item you wanted, they probably had it, or they could fix it or make it. Why he was here? One word. Tenten. What she had to do with it? Well, not her specifically, more like her older half, but she didn't know that brother by almost a decade and a half. He was totally awesome. Really, half the Anbu had had their swords commissioned by him. Collectors also placed orders for him to fill. Why? Well, he was already a damn good smith, apprentice when Kyubi attacked and his parents, and Tentens, were killed. They were master smiths. Thus, still being too young to legally take care of himself and Tenten, who was only a year or so old, they'd moved in with their uncle. Their uncle being a master jewelry maker. As in, give him some silver, and bam. You had a silver chain fine enough to be mistaken for spider silk. Thus Tenten's older brother learned to work finely wrought materials. When their uncle had died from a heart attack, they had inherited his shop. Then they renovated. The shop had been open for 5 years now, and did a nice brisk business when they were open. Well, that's what Tenten knew of it anyway. He wasn't going to tell her the truth of her family if he could avoid it. So, he calmly walked in, not disturbed by all the shiny and sometimes fatally sharp objects that were here. In abundance. They had several shelves stuffed full of weapons. A few displays of jewelry. Then there was a counter with the cash register. Behind that was the way to the smithy, and the way upstairs. Yo, he said, entering, anyone here? He called after getting no response, or hearing the hammer striking anywhere in the building. Tenten, twin buns in hair, calmly hopped down the stairs. Shush, Naruto. My brother is asleep. Oh, sorry, he said. Actually sorry for once. Before you ask why, he was working on the molds for the weapons of one of your ideas. Nice. He said appreciative. Which one? The shuriken one. That one would be a doozy, wouldn't it? Yep. He kept me up all night too. Oh, sorry about the Ten-chan. How about this, if shouldn't be too difficult to do, and would take your foes by surprise, especially if you ran out of weapons and all. You are on a team with a taijutsu specialist and one in training after all. He outlined the idea. She shot it down, listing various reasons. But it is not a bad idea. I was thinking that, but if you fix it right, you could change the metal plating to razors, using chakra to flick them open and close, on and off like a light switch. That's some major detail work. But it would be worth it to surprise Sensei. How would you flick the razors? Get a seal adept to do the work on that so you don't cut up the trees. Good, you're hired. We'll spend the next couple of days hammering out details, and then after a week or so we'll make the prototypes, and then maybe after a few trial runs we'll market them. That is once we make a decent seal array for them that does all that we want it to. Do you have to bring up that one occasion? That was just coincidence. That happened 57 times. Lady Luck loves me, he said offhand, not knowing that that was true. Whatever, Naruto. Now I've got to go before my insane teacher shows up. Also, he said he'd get to work on your kunai idea in a few weeks. With that said, Tenten shifted her sealing scroll, and exited the shop. Naruto pulled his dryad trick out of his bag of tricks and left Tenten sputtering to Guy and Lee that Naruto was there, and the pair went on about Naruto's youthfulness and his passions of youth, and springtime of youth. Tenten just sighed. She'd much rather be tortured than spend all day with the pair. Come on. Let's get Neji. Naruto then woke up her older brother, who after a few shakes, and several minutes was coherent, and then they had a short conversation, which was productive on both sides. Naruto then went down the stairs, and disappeared from view. Naruto reappeared several streets away in a henge of a brunette boy, minus the whisker marks. Time to go visit the people. They might have some new info for him. Afterwards, he might tell Teddy-san what was up if anything came up. Anbu HQ. Naruto snuck into the office area of the place. Going through several busy intersections, he snuck into Teddy-san's office. In luck, or some unknown workings of some unknown force, Teddy-san was there. Doing the thing that all people with sanity and some without it hated. Paperwork. It was evil, no one said otherwise. It was also necessary. Hey, Teddy-san, Naruto said, becoming visible once again. Ibiki looked up, inwardly hoping that he was not here, but his scarred outward face not betraying a thing. However, only a few people called him that. That list was very short. As in only one person could do it and get away with it. Shouldn't you be in school? The heavily scarred interrogator asked. Annoyed. Not that there was anything to give that away. Not his body language, not his tone of voice, no hand gestures, and no facial expression that would that away. The kid knew anyway. He mentally damned Itachi several times over for introducing them. It was also known as when Itachi was called off on a mission while in Anbu when it was his shift watching over the blonde, since only Uchihas and Hyugas did with their chakra reading dojutsus, and thus dumped him on a free Anbu. Also known as Ibiki. To calm the blonde down, Itachi had said, "Don't worry about his looks. He's actually more like a teddy bear than anything else." That had then evolved into Naruto's nickname for him, which stuck. Especially since his mask was that of a bear. Nah, they're doing stealth training today. I looked at the lesson plan. He pointed out. Sorry, but you're not really all that stealthy, boy. He could be, but tended to be too loud to be really called stealthy. I snuck in here. A place full of Anbu level ninja, and snuck up on you, Teddy-san. I don't think I need to attend something as boring as that. Besides, if I wasn't quiet, you would have heard me before I said anything. Also, really stealthy plus really quiet equals Aburame. Ibiki's lip twitched at that. That was true. So, boy, you don't need that class. I'll admit that is something to be impressed about, but that doesn't mean I can't interrogate you. Ibiki said as he adopted slightly menacing pose. Unless you want to explain to the Hokage and do the paperwork, since I'm a ward of the state. Also known as the Hokage since I'm in the academy. I think the required paperwork is about 7 sheets to be filled out in triplicate. He had actually looked that up one day at the tower when he was super bored and didn't feel like messing around in the tower's basement. Fun or not? So, you here for a social visit? Or did you piss off a couple of ninja? Again. The last time was a while ago, but that was a fun time. You make it sound like that's a bad thing. I mean, I am the only kid to get a small room dedicated to all my pranks. Mostly because it got me to stop ruining the uniforms, that was making the Anbu divisions go over budget. So how's the museum? Fine. They still want to know. Where did you get your supplies for all the stuff you pull? Here and there. A bit of everywhere thrown in. Smart ass. Now the real reason you're here, before I sick Anko on you. The kid shuddered. Crazy lady. You're mean. He pouted some, then put on a serious face as an 11-year-old kid that had whisker marks on his face could. Going on. The real reason I've come to visit you, is the fact that I've heard we've got some traitor ninjas here. My people aren't too sure of where some of them are, but they've agreed that there's 4 of them here. A possible 5th, but they haven't confirmed that. Really, kid? I haven't heard anything like that. He hadn't. He really needed to light a fire under the intelligence ninja. Then again, your people are really accurate. Why could you not tell me who they are? Accurate was an understatement. They were gods with information. It's why Naruto had him. He could do stuff that an 11-year-old ninja cadet couldn't. He found out stuff he couldn't. It worked out for both of them. The fact that, A, I'd get torn from limb to limb. B, they trust me. That's really hard to earn, much less keep, so I won't betray them even if someone else could use them. C, there's no goddamn way I'd betray them, because even if they don't do option A, they will make my life so bad that I'll wish I was in one of yours or crazy lady's cells. Same thing you said last time. It would be nice to meet some of them. Provided they're not scared or anything. Seen worse looking than you, Teddy-san. Na said bout that. There must have been an interesting story about that one, since the blonde had a small tremor run through his body, so slight that Ibiki thought that an Uchiha, with the Sharingan turned on, may have missed it. They currently think that one is somewhere in the academy, and that he is uninformed about the other 3, thus making him a remnant of some past cell or just some random traitor who isn't brave enough to quit and get hunted by the hunter nins. Speaking of which, I didn't mess with their coffee this time. I thought about it though, but I don't have anything on me to mess with it on me. Back to point. So for the past 6 weeks I've been pulling pranks like mad to mess with their schedules enough to where if they are actively reporting in I could find out who, get enough evidence, turn it in and have him arrested. Unfortunately, that's not happening. I'm not sure if they'll just do a lump report of our genin or if they plan to kidnap 1 or 2. Then again, the target could be something else entirely. The only one that has been taken more under the wing of the school is that one girl genius, Hitomi. Which I know well enough to where she is considered to be one of my mine. She has been working with me on this. The last one was a slight jolt to the brain. Isn't she only 8 or 9? And wasn't the prank war because of Kiba? At least that's what he heard. The last big prank was involved the roof. Yep. But you forget, I could have been out of the academy when I was about that old. She also lived on the street for a few years before I made her one of mine, and got her placed in the academy. Konoha isn't bad when compared to some others, or my short stay on the streets, but facts are facts. She was out there, in the streets. She's been crossing off some teachers. We've gone through about half of them. Took half the roof doing it too. That was a complete accident waiting to happen and I sort of did. The prank war, that's mostly part of the cover. So who do you have left to cross off? A lot of subs, a few teachers, Mizuki. Aren't you in his class? Yeah, I'm hesitating to cross him off because he just rubs me wrong like some people. Call it a gut feeling. So what about the other three? Well, it's my people's current belief that they're masquerading as a Konoha Genin team. Hell, one of them might even be Konoha Chunin now. But that doesn't seem to fit with what feeling I get about them. So they should all be counted as Genin now, but with at least one Jonin if not Anbu level ninja with 2 high med level Chunin, or special Jonin capabilities. That team should be about 3 or so years old, maybe 4, or even 5 but that seems to be pushing it. All of them Genin, and they should be how they were originally made, or they got a replacement teammate who had a bad history with his other team. As in they got in over their head and drowned. So how do you plan to deal with them? Fail. Again. That's getting pretty annoying by the way. That way if it is Mizuki, I could find out his motives, put a stop to him if I can, and he's alone, maybe even learn something along the way. If that goes as planned, I could wrangle out a field promotion, get placed on a Genin team, get to the Chunin exams as a rookie, find out who's behind them all, and such. Nice plan. Now am I going to be pulling the strings on the last part or not? Getting a rookie team in would be a bit of work. It hasn't happened for the past 5 years or so. It would be hard to do so. But it could be done. Just with a lot of difficulty. Nah, I'll do that. Now remember our deal. You don't tell Hokage Gigi that I'm doing something this dangerous. Remember he is considered the god of shinobis and the professor. After all, and I won't tell everyone that, he probably would have said more, but Ibiki cut him off. Deal kid. Now then, out of my office boy. The blonde gave a huge grin. Wanna see my latest trick that I mastered? You won't. I guarantee it. With that the blonde seemed to melt into the very air around him. Damn, Ibiki thought, not even the barest hint of chakra showing him. It's like he's part of the environment. No hand seals either. That is an interesting skill kid. Then another thought entered his mind. Ibiki, just think about all the pranks he could like that. Be happy he stopped pranking your Anbu. Then another thought entered his head. When he gets to Chunin, grab him and get him in the Anbu A. S. A. P. That would be such a handy skill on assassination missions. Naruto's apartment building. Okay. Naruto thought sprawled out on his bed. Got most of the things that needed to be done. 8. Check. Cleaned place and showered. Check. Gamed with Shikamaru. Visited Tenten and her brother. Met with my people. Updated Ibiki. All check. Okay. That's all done. The Twitch should come sometime in the next hour or so, if it stays consistent. When that happens, I'll be down for a bit, thank you in fucking creasing pain. Then a small thought crammed into his head. I hope I don't puke this time. That was replaced by, damn it Fox. What are you doing to help me? I thought that if I die, you up. We'll both die. Huge ass chakra and regenerative abilities aside. Why the can't you just purge this shit and not have to worry about it anymore? Then he felt the twitch, and felt pain leap through his body like a live wire. Despite not having any neighbors, Naruto held in his scream from habit. He bit his hand. Feeling another jolt arch through his body, he bit down harder. This process continued like this for about the next 20 minutes. His skin felt like it was slowly sliced off by a burning hot knife. Slowly taking his skin off layer by layer. Then after the skin was off, the nerves in his muscles which had been convulsing for the entire skin episode, then got the same, eventually the pain settled in his bones. After he was sure that the pain accompanying the twitch had stopped and he wouldn't get any nasty aftershocks, he recognized the taste of blood and bile in mouth. He pulled out his hand and looked at it dispassionately and from a medical standpoint. The skin was ripped and shredded, and lot of blood was pouring out of it. He then tried to move his fingers. Only the pinky and thumb could move with minimal pain. Moving his hand up over his heart to slow blood flow to the wound, he could see the bone. He then moved his head closer to his hand. Scrutinizing it well, he sat up using muscles that felt like rubber. Fuck, he had bit through bone. He then got up on rubbery legs and went to the sink to wash the excess blood off. He then took a small roll of bandages out of his vest, and after he washed most of the blood off his hand wrapped it, and then moved the bone into place. His face showed the barest hint of a snarl. He then made himself a quick drink to sip upon while he got his coordination and vision back. Naruto then moped around his apartment, cleaning up the spilled blood on the floor near his bed, and after getting a few things from his closet, organized his next prank supplies and got them. He then decided to brush his teeth and wash out his mouth. It was not good to show up with a bloody mouth. He coughed and spat up blood. Damn, it had really started to get intense about 6 weeks ago. Hell, 6 weeks ago, he would have only bruised his hand, not bit through his damn bone. He then checked his teeth. There wasn't much of a difference. They were just sharper than they appeared. Then again, foxes were omnivores like people. You couldn't really expect saber kitty teeth. Even if he was merging with Kyuubi at a more pronounced rate than he would have been if the fox hadn't messed with the fox in the first place. The thing was, he knew why. He knew why he had bit through his hand. He just didn't like it at all. He had thought it was because of Kyuubi. The pain that had accompanied the twitch had escalated. At first, when he was like 3, it was a twitch. He had found out when he was 5 that that was not true. Then again, being a bender for 2 to 3 months had took a lot of innocence from him. He was only alive thanks to a few people. They didn't even number enough to match the number of fingers on his left hand. He then started the long arduous progress of weaning himself off of what was causing the pain to increase. It had mixed results. When he was like 8, it had escalated to the well-used feeling of aching muscles that had been well used and abused. As of 6 months ago, it felt as if was having a week's worth of a sprained ankle's pain stuck into a single minute. Now it was if someone repeatedly jabbed a live wire into him. It just sucked. Then again, he was pushing to get over that poisonous addiction before graduation. It just had a lot of problems with the withdrawal. Then again, it was a poison that killed you from the withdrawal. You'd die from the sheer amount of pain you were in. So with that happy note playing in his thoughts, he unraveled the bandages on his hand showing pristine skin, flexed it, and dashed off to school, if only to watch the prank that he had pulled go off, with Shikamaru's accedance. Then they would all ditch class for the day and with it a quiz. Sure, their grades would suffer, but hey, he had an image to create and maintain. To be continued. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.